to budget issues this evening. We will get started with public comment. We do not have the notice for the franchise fee lawsuit because we have read that our requisite number of times. So we are done with that. So that'll means we'll be out of here quickly. Is there any public comment on any item before us tonight or not on our agenda? Mr. Nelson.
Kevin Nelson, 4235 Bruce Avenue. After last night's watched the meeting about the downtown TIF application and the observation, or at least the disclosure, that the TIF is not as financially sound as maybe some would like, and it's a little short of money, which would, I guess, lead me to believe, you know, what would be their purpose, and their purpose is probably, you know, they're going to be there. But at that point, I guess, as far from a budget standpoint, I would propose that you combine all of the TIF district coordinators to put it into one coordinated position and a staff position. You probably would save $300,000–400,000 a year. I just can't imagine that a TIF coordinator is working 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. I mean, our TIF coordinator, we have 10 meetings a month. We don't even have a meeting in December and August, and we have one hour meeting a month. You've seen them. Most all of you have seen them. So, you know, at some point, it seems to me it would make sense to just, you could leave all of the TIF organization in place. I mean, they would just come to the body and they'd make their recommendation, and that would be the coordination, is they would just, but they would be the coordinator for all of them. And then the second point is, I guess I'd like to, well, the reason I showed up before was about that meeting from the April 14th about the rec center down there at the TIF district. We don't know what happened. I mean, what was the object of the meeting? What was determined? What was said? We don't know. But with that being said, apparently there was some need for a meeting. So with the last night's strategy proposal, having a task force going forward, I'd hate to take this boat out of the water completely. It seems to me, rather than waiting till fall or later into the year, almost to the end of the year, to create your strategy positions and take that position up, it seems to me it would be more beneficial to create that task force, keep that boat floating at least a little bit, because you'd end up going all the way into, what do you want to go all the way to Christmas now to start this all back up and then try to put a proposal together after the first of the year to go to the voters next year? That seems quite challenging, and would probably, you may not do very well with that because there's just not going to be the time to do it. And it just seems to me, if you would just keep this momentum going a little bit and just keep people involved, that'd be easier to get this going at a future date if you kept everyone engaged at least a little bit. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment this evening on anything on our agenda tonight or not on our agenda? There's no one online. There's no one coming forward, so we'll close the public comment period and move into our agenda. I do note on our agenda, it does identify the mayor's statement regarding the settlement of franchise fee lawsuit. We were required to read that 3 times, and I think we read it 4 times. So we will dispense with that, despite the fact that it is on our agenda, just to make that record. And turn it over to our presenter. We've got 4 bullet points. Council, we'll just follow the order of the bullet points under item 1, police, fire, legal, and municipal court. And start off with our police department. Welcome, Chief St. John.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, good evening. I did have the lights down a little bit to improve my appearance, but Councilmember Rupsis didn't like that, so you can, you can thank him for that. To make Andy proud, I hope this presentation will be clear, concise, and free of superfluous information. So we'll move right through it. Bottom line up front, This would be what we are requesting going forward in '24 out of the Public Safety Fund. total of $30,693,348. Starting at the top clockwise, you can see the blue section, of course, is our personnel costs. By far, it is the biggest expense for the police department. I think you'll find the same will be true for fire. We do not sell products. We provide a service, and this is where our assets are. So we work very hard to hire A-plus personnel, and you can see the work that's done on the other end. But that's about 80% of our budget. The balance of it, moving around clockwise, O&M, 16% of our budget at $4.9 million. And then some smaller expenditures. We have some capital, purchasing some cars, some equipment. We have some debt service and some transfers. But all in all, what, the biggest expense obviously would be our personal services. I would also say that our total operating budget for 24 is $32,414,583. The reason for that is we have added $1,721,235 from grants, fees, charges, and other things that we've got to bolster our operation. That $1,000,007 adds up to about 5% of the 32 million request. I bring that to your attention because I think it's important for you to know that we are actively seeking partners in grants and donations and all that stuff to help us with things over and above what the budget that you allow us to have, to continue to operate at the level that we do. We've been very successful with that over the years. And again, $1,000,007 just shows that we're just not sitting here taking what you give us. We're actually soliciting stuff, making sure that we're paying attention to what's out there on the grant scene specifically. When we break down the two biggest, or the comparisons here from 23 to 24, you can see that about a 6% increase overall, $1,000,007. And I will tell you that when you look at the next slide, here you can see that the primary increase is on personnel. We have COLAs, we have step increases, and we have more people because of the safety levy. So that is the 5.7 increase. You can see the difference, and then we are essentially holding the line on O&M. So this is the difficult part is we've added resources, we've added personnel, but our O&M, which is the stuff that we use to conduct day-to-day business, has essentially remained stagnant. And so that'll be challenging as we go forward. Again, when we look at the overall increase for our budget, again, it's 6%, but most of it, should say all of it, is in personnel services. Just for reference, last year we had 90,000 calls for service, and that was a 2% increase over 2021. So we continue to have relatively small increases in our calls for service, usually in that 3% range, a little bit of ebb and flow, but I think other presentations that I've made to you show that our strategies flatten some of those areas where historically we've been high, and then we've turned them down in some other areas. So given what we dealt with the past year, 2%, pretty much in line with that. Out of the public safety fund, for those of you who like detail on finances, I'll refer to this side of the table over here. Broken this up specifically into the divisions rather than looking at one big pie chart blob of what we're spending on personnel. You can see in the column on the left, corresponding with the rows, the column on the left corresponding with the rows of what we're spending in our respective divisions throughout the whole police department. So for example, when you're looking at the patrol which would be our operations. So anybody in uniform driving patrol cars, that's where the lion's share, probably 85, 90 of our officers are assigned, 16 million assigned there. You can see what the O&M is and some of the supplies. So as you look at the specific division, you can see how we have broken that out line item wise, and you can see where we're spending the money. You can look at that at your leisure. Again, I would bring your attention down to the bottom of page 2. You can see in blue, the top line there on the total, that is the request of you out of the public safety fund, the 30 million. And then we are going to add the additional 2 columns in the blue, and that's the 1,000,007 that we're going to bring us up to 32 for an operating budget FY24. What are we going to look like as we go forward? And this is as we speak right now. As you're aware, you've authorized us through safety levy and through budget authority, 167 sworn officers from top to bottom. Right now, as it stands, we have 149 deployed in the field. We have 8 that are in field training. We have 3 at the academy, and we have 7 vacancies. Right now, we have 6 in background investigation. So again, we're going to be hiring pretty quickly. Again, what the challenge is getting the field training, the academy people deployed. Takes a little while to get them up and running and out on their own. And so that's where we're standing right now as we speak. On the support staff side, authorized 38 and a half. You can see that we have 33 staff. We are in the process of advertising for the balance of the community service officers. We've got 4 on board right now. We deferred the last 3 for a couple reasons. Number one, to help us with the big budget hit we had last year with bringing all these people on board. Second of all, we didn't have equipment available for them, which of course wasn't anything we could control. That has all been rectified, so we'll be bringing them on probably in July, early August. And I will show you of all the investments that you made, that CSO program has reaped the biggest benefit immediately, and we'll show that here in a second. We do need to hire a support specialist. I did ask permission to round that 1.5 up to 2, so we don't have to do a part-time employee. We do have that, and then we're looking for another evidence ID tech. So all in all, we're really sitting pretty good. We don't want to have double-digit vacancies that we're looking at here, and we have people in the pipeline. We have never had problem getting people in the front door. It just takes a little bit of time to get them where we need them to be efficient at what we're doing here, and that's the biggest thing that we're struggling with right now. And of course, the timing. You roll into summer, it's your busiest time. Animal control, the biggest division in the city of Billings. They are fully staffed at 7. So you can see how they break out their supervisor, office assistant, and 5 ACOs taking care of all things animals for the city. They do a wonderful job with the resources given. Here's some of the successes that we had going back. Obviously, as I indicated, that community service officer program has just succeeded and exploded beyond my wildest dreams on how successful. Obviously, the people that put it together and the staff that they put in there makes a huge difference, and they've done a great job. As you're well aware, we did make some inroads to flattening and reducing violent crime across the board. Same with property crimes. That was not by accident. It was being able to apply resources to our strategic objectives that we have spoken about ad nauseum. And so we hope to continue to build on that. Downtown safety increased, again, same reason, officer presence, having more resources available to get on things a lot quicker. And then, of course, as I indicated, people want to come and work here. They want to come and work for the police department. We have officers from other parts of the country that are working for us, escaping whatever they got going over there. That's most helpful for us because in the turnaround time for getting an officer out on their own, that's 12 weeks of academy that we don't have to send them to because they've been an officer somewhere. They just need to learn the BPD way. And that's a month or two. And the thing it's orientation and paperwork. Other than that, they pretty much dialed in. So those that are in training, the 8 in field training, there's 2 that are going to be out within a month. We got a guy from Alaska and a guy from Arizona. So they'll be out pretty quickly, and that's just going to be a great help. So I'm very proud of that. The people want to come here and work. The one question subcommittee came up with, I mean, obviously we really want to make sure that the citizens know and realize and understand, that they're getting what they paid for. And so the biggest thing, obviously we've spoken about the increased officer presence and the impact that has made. But the return of investment on the CSO program is highlighted up here in this bulleted list. And they've just came on board last December or November, I believe. So 4 of them came online in November, and you can see what they did. They really they helped out our volunteers, our report writers, because we had stuff sitting in the queue that we hadn't gotten to. So 1,300 cases, 492 reports. They reduced the call load to the Crime Prevention Center by 56%. And what is significant about that is a face-to-face contact with a citizen. We have a CSO at some point in time making face-to-face contact rather than having to call in, wait for somebody to call you, which could be, days or weeks. And you can see the response time to those complaints from our citizens increased by 44%. That's great customer service. And it's great customer service to the police officers because they're not having to do this stuff.
And Chief, just to clarify, what does it mean to increase response time? I would think we were decreasing response time, making them faster, in other words.
Correct.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt, go ahead.
No,
What I would say is, to that point, maybe that's increased response time to the citizens or the complainants that are calling in. We're getting to them faster.
Yeah.
either one of you are correct.
It's all good. It's all good.
We're either faster getting there or faster responding to them,
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a good thing, that bullet there. And again, we have 4 of 7 staffed, and we're going to get that up and running July, August. And what we are really looking forward to is to expanding their responsibilities. Right now, pretty much, cold calls, nobody there, no problem, manning an intersection or whatnot. We're really looking forward specifically to having them investigate property damage accidents and issue citations. So that will free up officers even more. Again, we're not going to send them to DUIs, injury accidents, all of that stuff, but a fender bender where they can go and investigate it, fill out the paperwork, and issue a citation. We just need to, work out how a non-sworn can do that, which I believe other cities have it, and it's something as simple as being sworn in. And so we've touched base with Gina's office on that. We'll see how that goes. But our staff is very good about not going to look for no. So they're going to come forward with stuff, and I don't want the CSO program to be the dumping ground for things that officers don't want to do. But they most definitely can free up officers' time because it's critical now. More and more we're hearing officers being sent on a call and a cover's not available. And it's incumbent upon them to make the decision, I'm going to either wait or I'm going to go. There's some that you have to go. But that's not what we want to have, is people waiting for cover, when something's going on. So again, that was the entire premise of CPSM of bringing civilians on board, was to offload some of those things so your sworn personnel can increase their proactive time and increase the responses with that. The trends, obviously our population increasing. Mayor, I haven't forgot your request on your address coming up. Wyeth and I are working on getting you some numbers for that. So I'll be interested to see what the population increase is. Usually it's at 1 to 3% thereabouts per year. Obviously, we got a problem with gun violence. We've spoken about that in the past, and then the complex problems throughout the justice system, which is capacity throughout. Capacity throughout. The jail is the crown jewel of the complex problem, but you have prosecution issues, you got defense, you got P&P, you got judges, you name it. And as we have spoken before, anytime you change something in the justice system, you're going to affect someplace else. So we need to make sure, if you're going to give me 20 more officers, well, then that's going to really impact Gina's operation and the jail and all that stuff. And so those are things that we deal with. Challenges, obviously, I think we all realize at this juncture there are very few problems we can't solve if we throw enough money at it. And so sustainable funding for that is always going to be an issue. Increasing demand for services, those calls keep coming. As the city grows, as we add population, logic just dictates that we're going to have more of that. The increased staffing needs, are we going, and this really jumps into another discussion when we start talking about annexation and development. I know you've all seen my town crier admonition, but it's true. We keep adding and annexing, but we don't keep up with resources. And what happens is we get spread out and we have, we reach an inability to effectively respond. And so that's the admonition. I'd be remiss if I didn't point that out to you. I'm not against that stuff, but the increased staffing to manage things like that is imperative as we go forward. Obviously, you want to stay on top of recruiting and retention. I am absolutely adamant we are not going to reduce our standards and requirements just to check a box or fill numbers. I think you see firsthand what quality police officers and quality police work looks like. And that's because of the processes that we have. And sometimes it takes a little while. Technology is very, very expensive, and it has become almost a necessity, I think, in every department that you hear from. And then once you sign up for something, then you have to do the updates and you got to do the licensing. And it gets really, really expensive in a hurry. Obviously, to the forefront would be our body camera watch guard program. Previous councils were told, once you go down this path, there's no going back. And so if you could imagine the hue and cry if all of a sudden we decide that it's too expensive and we cut our body camera program. Your phones would ring, as would mine, and, so those are things that we need to consider. And that's just the big obvious one. And then, of course, preparing for the unpredictable. Chief Valdez and I spent a lot of time worrying about stuff like this. That's what you pay us for, to make sure we're ready for the stuff that's low frequency, high liability. And the thing that comes to the forefront right now would be any potential top over or breach of the ditch up there. That's an unpredictable thing, and if we are not prepared or plan for it, we're failing. We're failing the community, we're failing you. And that's just one. So there's a whole litany of things that we need to be nimble, we need to be flexible and be very, very deliberate about how we're going to respond to stuff. The country's had a real bad week with mass shootings. So we need to be prepared to handle something if should it break out. And so that's where we're at. Mayor, I have nothing further. I would like to say I'm not taking questions because everything I said was right, but I don't think you're going to allow me to get away with that.
If anybody would like to just agree with the chief, it's your opportunity, or even ask questions. Councilmember Neese, we can go this way. Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Chief in a lot of ways, but I do have a question because regarding the increased response time, which is really good to hear, because that's one of the things I think we all hear from people that have taken too long. But when you say increased response time, from what to what? What are we talking about, the averages? What were they increasing from?
Yeah, I want to say days is what it is, and I will drill down on that. I'm just happy with increases. Yeah, so I can clarify that for you, whether it's hours or days or whatnot. When we're looking at the report writing center, that's what it was. It was somebody will call you within 24, 48 hours is what we were telling. The phone operator was telling the victim. And this was situations where there was no suspects, no witnesses, no evidence. And so you're not getting a police officer, you're going to get a volunteer 24, 48 hours if they're working, if they're there, and it's volunteers, whatnot. So we have increased or decreased, the time it takes us to contact that victim by 44%. Days, hours, I can get that for you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Gill, Councilmember Joy, Councilmember Rowan.
Great, thank you. So with the CSOs out and about now, and I had initially thought they would be sort of behind desks just doing paperwork all the time. So it's great to hear that they're out and about. What sort of vehicle and identification do they have? Is it a different look than the sworn officers, and how's that look?
Yes, absolutely, Councilmember. We don't want them to be confused for sworn police officers. So they are driving a Ford Explorer, white in color with green stripes. They have a completely different uniform. They don't have firearms. So they look more like a park officer than they do a law enforcement officer. And that is by design. We don't want them being mistaken, and we very specific rules on what they're allowed to respond to. Thank you.
Councilmember Joy, Councilmember Rowan.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening, Chief. I wanted to ask, kind of follow up with your comments about when the council decided to go for the use of body cams, that would be an increasing cost over time. I just wanted to ask, how effective has it been? It was a very deep discussion and long discussion about the investment in this. How effective has it been? Has it been effective in incidences of use of force?
Yeah, absolutely, Councilmember. Thank you for the question. The body cameras have been very effective and accepted by officers and accepted by the public alike. It provides, our officers are held accountable based on, and we're seeing what they're doing and what they're saying on the body cameras, and also the citizens as well. And so when we get complaints, a lot of times you'll say, well, I have a video. Why don't you come in and look at it with me? Nah, I'm good. Because they know what that is. And so it's really served a purpose to hold our officers accountable and the public as well. We now have really first-person ability to document incidents as they take place. Absolutely critical. I mean, we have these body camera videos for, our officer-involved shootings, some of the serious accidents that we go on. So, they turn their body camera on anytime they go anywhere. And so we have everything that they do, everything that they're seeing, and then we can review that. We do that if there's a use of force, we do it automatically. If there are, any questions or anything like that, we look at them. It's part of the evidence chain that the GINA staff relies on. We capture statements, spontaneous statements, things like that. So it is an excellent, excellent tool across the board for a wide variety of reasons. Evidence gathering, accountability, transparency, and the stuff we have is top notch. And that's thanks to your investment. Because stuff that we're looking at is, pretty good TV quality.
Thank you, Councilmember Rowan.
Thanks, Mayor. Chief, I have a couple questions sort of in the same vein. I want to talk a little bit about alignment between the goals that you identify here in the budget and the budget resources towards them. So in this sort of area of technology and efficiency in the field, and that, we accelerated some of the replacement of the mobile terminals, and the rest of them are in this budget, correct?
Correct.
And then we talked a little bit at the budget committee about the need to start doing more e-ticketing and having printers in every car. Is that in here?
No.
Okay, because you're not ready for that, or
No, I think it's
Andy
more,
wouldn't let you, or?
I think it's more of a priority. And originally, and I think it had to do with we were going to equip our cars with the printers and the e-site, which would be the electronic citation writer, if you will, out of the revenue generated by e-site tickets, okay? And I think we had a disconnect somewhere on whether or not the Supreme Court said you can't do that, and then somebody said, no, I don't think they can do that. So if that revenue is available, that's what it was earmarked for, and we will begin implementing that. And there was a balance there, I believe, and so that's where that would come from. The other technical stuff, probably the lion's share is the MDT. That is such an important piece of equipment for our officers.
And then, so you have this goal here of improving crime scene investigation, a lot of technology. Have you budgeted for that, or does council need to consider a gap in those resources?
We'll, obviously, if you have a windfall and would like to send it this direction, we'd be more than happy. We do budget for it. And a lot of the things that are outside of the budget, we utilize drug forfeiture for.
Okay.
So we have a device called a FARO, F-A-R-O. Not sure what that stands for, but it's a three-dimensional crime scene replicator. Put it out in the middle, it spins around, and it gives you a three-dimensional crime scene. Takes hours off of what we're doing. We have drones now, so we have the drone technology. A whole myriad of stuff. Let's get into analysis of hard drives and cell phones. Those are all things that are accounted for in our operations budget, specifically out of detectives. Excuse me, but anything over and above that they come to me and say, hey, I need this widget, then we look at drug forfeiture, or the donation funds is pretty robust as well, if somebody has not earmarked it for a specific thing. So we try not to bother you for extra money, because you're being very generous with what you have.
And then you also have indicated here some goals of, it seems like, increasing some training, hosting some trainings. Is that accounted for in your budget?
Yes,
Okay.
not very well. If you would, let me see here if I can. I'm going back to that slide there. If you take a look at the second from the bottom, you can see, I'm not saying look a gift horse in the mouth, but, we could use more training money for the things that we have to do, and the equipment that gets utilized. Some of those things are, when you're training with a taser, for example, you actually have training cartridges. Those cost money to use. Our simunitions or training, things like that. We try to mitigate that by using our simulator as much as we can. But again, that's just a really, really fancy computer game. And so again, hands-on, realistic as you can is where we really benefit. So, a lot of that is sending people to schools that are out of state, some specialty schools. And then the O&M, of course, is the stuff that we need to, to support whatever training it is.
So we're only budgeting $15,000 to send our officers to trainings?
15,000, yeah.
Okay.
So the salaries will be under the admin lieutenant.
Yep.
That's where you'll find that.
Then my last question, Chief, is when we talk about best practices, the crime scene mapping, the body count, all the things that you're doing, what's the next? What's the next big frontier that you see as police chief? This is our next best practice we need to start implementing.
Good question. I mean, there's always a better mousetrap. And my wife's probably watching, and I'm fighting with a mouse right now. She'd probably not like that analogy, but, you know, the stuff that we have can, you know, there's always better, higher things out there. You know, you can get a better crime mapping things, stuff like that. But, you know, I just don't have a good answer for you right now. I'm very, very thankful and very pleased at the equipment that we have now across the board. There's nobody in the state of Montana that is supported technologically, equipment-wise, that we are. We have top-notch stuff. And I've mentioned it before, if you want to know what a community and what a policy body thinks of their police department, look at their cars. I mean, you've been places, they got no hubcaps, the doors are different colors, the light bar falls off when you go around a corner. You don't have that here. I mean, we have top-notch equipment, sharp, all sorts of good things in that. And that speaks volumes for what this community and what the policy body thinks and supports the police department.
Would you mind, Chief, thinking about what the next big best practice is, whether it's technology or training or whatever, and just maybe by the end of the month, give us an
Absolutely.
answer in writing? Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Parrington?
So kind of going along the lines of resources, whenever you're working, because now we have, I don't know how many DCIs we have in Billings now, and how do you divide up the resources for that? Is it part of those funds that we see from grants that are for coordinated efforts, or does it kind of depend who's first, or if you let it off to DCI, where do those resources come and go?
Council member, if somebody is assigned to us from another department, and we do have a DCI agent helping with our domestic violence problem, the state's paying the salary. We're just co-locating and cooperating on investigations. Many of our task forces are subsidized by federal agencies, so the FBI, the DEA, Rocky Mountain HIDA, for example, will give us money to support the operation. And what that is overtime, equipment, operational things we call PEPI, so it's personal evidence and personal information, so you're paying for informants.
Right.
But we pay our own salary.
Right.
We pay our own overtime. So we're not getting somebody that is, that we're paying part of this stuff. We're pretty much assigned to a federal task force, not the other way around. Did I answer your question?
I think so. I just wasn't clear about when city money is used for an investigation versus state money.
Well, if a BPD officer is involved in any investigation, local, state, or federal, it's BPD money.
Okay.
If the state has the same, it's state money. Where we commingle is the grants or the task force assignment and allowances. It says we will pay for your overtime, and we will pay for vehicles, and we will provide deputization and all sorts of things needed to operate in the federal arena. That's where you see commingling. That's when we come to you for grants. For example, the HIDA grant, the JAG grants, those are all things that would be commingling, for lack of a better term. But personal services, we're paying for our own people.
Gotcha. So another question, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
So under one of your goals under support services, it's better support of crime prevention efforts. And that kind of goes into Jennifer's best practices for me, because we've talked a lot at our retreat about domestic violence. What can we do for children that are in trauma? Do you see any movement forward? I think the DARE program was good at one time, and now with, increase in drugs being available to kids, is there any sort of a movement or some sort of a program now that's coming out nationally that would deal with either its drug education, drug prevention among youth. What about domestic violence? What are some of these prevention tactics do you see that directly comes out of the police department?
Well, council member, there's no specific program coming out nationally that had the, the DARE and the GREAT focus. Those all went by the wayside. I'm not quite sure why. What we have right now in the schools are the SROs. There's 8 of them, which cover, primarily the high schools. They split the middle schools, and then they stop by, they split up the grade schools as well, and that also covers the Catholic school system. And so in there, of course, is our relationship building, our networking, and they teach classes. They actually go in and, talk about whatever the topic is. So they do a lot of instruction on that right there. On the crime prevention side, we are out in the community with Neighborhood Watch, with the Business Watch. You're well aware that they started the camera, the Ring camera program, had well over 400 people sign up for that. Getting people engaged in paying attention to their neighbors and what's going on. Also, there's a lot of interest and a lot of traction with Step TED, both primarily out of the business sector, but it's certainly applicable in residential areas as well. And so all of those things are things that we do. We do a lot of personal safety training for businesses, for employees. And then on the far end of the spectrum, it's active shooter to whoever wants that, all free of charge. The issue I have is that we have 2, have a sergeant and 1 officer there. And so here's where something that the CSOs might be able to help with. And then, of course, volunteers. We just hired a new volunteer coordinator, and his charge is to, get this thing regenerated, re-energized, get the numbers back up. And I'm convinced he'll do that. And so that's where we're at right now. Obviously, the discussion at your level, we've had a lot with Councilmember Owen is, the community crime prevention strategy, what it is that we want to do and who's going to do it. I would say right now, the police department primarily would be crime deterrence strategy, as opposed to, engaging the community and getting people to commit to doing all this stuff here. So that's what we have on the horizon and what we're looking at. And again, the more resources that we have, the more time that we can free up, the more we can do stuff like that.
Thank you, Councilor Rupsis, and I've got a couple of questions. Councilor Rupsis.
Sorry, thank you, Mayor. I should have. Chief, I'm going to apologize. You just happened to be first up, but your department is by no means unique in this. In the budget, we have a whole list of goals, and they're copied from last year, almost word for word. What are your specific measurable goals for this year? I mean, it's just hard to look at this and understand what it is that we're going to try to accomplish this year. In fact, some of these goals go back years. So can you talk to us a bit about that, about what we're going to be able to look back at the end of this budget year and say, yes, we actually accomplished this and set out to do it and did it?
Well, Councilmember, what I'd like to say of it was probably a visionary back in the day when I kept putting these things up, because these core goals really are the heart of what it is that we need to do to make this community safe. And specifically in the violent crime and the traffic and all the stuff that you're referring to. With the safety levy and people wanting to know very clearly what it is, our strategic objectives, where we really got it out front, but it's always been there. That has been our tasking to make this community safe, and those are the things that we needed to attack. I hate to just walk away and say, oh, I need a new one that nobody's seen before, when we're really not where we need to be with the ones that we've already created. So yes, you're absolutely right. They're very similar, if not the same, or close to it. But the reason for that is that we're not done with that yet. We're not done with that yet, and we need to make inroads. And I think based on what had happened, with our resources and levy and all that stuff, we showed you what we can do by flattening some numbers and turning them down. And so continue that is where we need to be in my mind. I don't need to say, I'm good here, or we need to go over here and do something else. Because really our charge is pretty narrowly focused on what it is that we're doing for this community, providing for the public safety. Did that answer your question?
Not really. All joking aside, I mean, when we set a goal to do something, we put a time goal towards it. We put some measures there to tell us whether or not we're actually accomplishing that, and then we continue to move the bar. You said that we experienced a drop in crime this past year because of the new resources that we added.
Correct.
We're not adding a ton of resources in this next year, so what's going to drive the next decrease? And again, your department is not unique here, so we'll have the same conversation with Chief Valdez when he comes up here, because you at least had a few different words. But it's, in my opinion, it's not sufficient to just say, well, we're going to keep doing what we've been doing, or we're going to keep trying to get these goals, because for the last 10 years, we've seen crime go up and up and up, and we've kept our goals pretty much the same. At some point, we have to kind of put something out there as a marker to say, this is what we want to be held accountable to.
Understood.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess what I just comment on, those end goals are, I think we all agree on. We all want to see violent crime go down, so we don't want you to depart from that. Maybe the question is how you get there and the implementation stages, and that may change from year to year. We're at a different place because now we're going to have a lot more people. So hopefully we will continue to see those decreases. But Chief, three things, and I'll just mention what they are so that you can judge your time however you want. But one, what's not in this budget or any other budget in the past is money for a rewards program of any consequence. My understanding is that there's some dollars that find their way to confidential informants, for example. Crime Stoppers comes up with $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year from miscellany bake sales or wherever they get their dollars, but it's not a robust rewards program. I don't know if that's considered a waste of time and money or is still part of good practice, but that'd be one thing. If you can just comment whether we should be trying to find money in this budget for something that focuses on rewards and publicizing for the public the particular crimes that may have benefits far beyond, a couple of crimes solved with a reward. So that's one thing. Second is, as you know, we've sent this letter to the county commissioners offering to participate in a jail space assessment. The comments were made by several county commissioners that they're not opposed to that, but it needs to be part of a much larger project, which makes me a little nervous, that we could get bogged down there. But if that's the case, they're going to look to us to participate, certainly financially to some extent, which we've said we will do, but also on the staffing side. And that's going to be a burden on you or people in your department. So that's one good. Second question is the budget and the Billings Police Department ready to participate in whatever that might look like, assuming the county commissioners decide to move ahead. And then lastly, if you can maybe just comment more specifically on crime rates. You did mention that. That's what the public is going to be interested in. My understanding is that rates for the last 2 years are down, both in violent crime and property crime, modestly, i.e. 5% or less, but at least we've plateaued and are on the down slope, which is good, and also downtown rates. So maybe you can just help the public to understand that a little bit more. But anyway, rewards, jail and broader study, and crime rates.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we do not have any money set aside for any rewards per se. The funds that we use to pay informants and all that is grant money, to speak of. Historically, any money that goes through Crime Stoppers has come from Breakfast Exchange or Optimus, one of those service organizations. And as you indicate, most of them have pretty much slowed down significantly. We do make phone calls and they do offer up money. So there is things there. I will tell you, we don't pay out a lot because we really haven't found people deserving of it. They don't give good information, or it doesn't check all the boxes on being qualified to receive award money. And I asked this question because you mentioned it to me a year or so ago, and that was just it, is that, yeah, we offer stuff up there, but, nobody comes forward, or if they do, it's nothing usable. And so we're just not going to give it to them because. So the program, the infrastructure's there. We can certainly, of course, the council's prerogative to create a line item for that to increase, and we can get more active with it. But that's how we operate right now. I'm not opposed to it in any way, shape, or form. I don't want to pay people just to pay people for doing the right thing, but there's sometimes we need a little bit of help. Second of all, in the jail, absolutely. I can tell you our staff will help with whatever's needed on that assessment. Don't think it will be any more intrusive or labor intensive than CPSM was. We have, one of the larger departments, so I've got people that can do that. And this is a critical item for the police department, as you're well aware. This significantly impacts our operation, significantly impacts our ability to provide the public safety, because we can't get people in for all the reasons that you're well aware. The crime rate, and I'm not sure if I understand your question there, Mayor, so I'll just forge ahead. You can get me back on if you're not. We didn't do a crimes per thousand in this report, but we were basically looking at specific incidents that we measure for violent crime specifically and property crimes. Those are the things that really get our citizens' attentions. So the violent crime, and again, they call it part one in the federal system. We pick out homicide, we pick out sexual assault, we pick out aggravated assault, we pick out robberies, and those were the subcategories, and there's about 4 or 5 more that were in there. And we compare that with going back 10 years if you look at our annual report. And so you can see we had 2 big spike years, 2020 and then 2022, I think. So we had 2 big spike years in there, and if you average those 10 years, for the criminal homicides alone, it's 6 a year. 6 a year. And so, again, I'm not looking for a gold star because there's 6 victims and associated family. However, the spikes, I like to think, are an anomaly. And we want to get back to the normal numbers and turn them down, which of course is reflected, Councilmember Rupsis, in our goals. And so we did the same with property crimes as well. We compared those, and we saw that burglaries, auto thefts, and what else was there? Thefts, I believe, misdemeanor thefts, all reduced. I think that's in part to the effort we put forward. We partnered with a lot of our retail stores and gave them, with the support of Gina's office, some really usable stuff so they could essentially put their own case together. And then we get robust prosecution out of our prosecutor. So that made a statement that we're not putting up with this anymore, and we're starting to see things turn a little bit. And that was essentially the process that we went through on all of the numbers to compare 10 years data on those specific crimes. Did I answer your question, Mayor?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. You bet. Any other questions for Chief Constable Shaw?
Thank you. Not a question, so you can relax, but just a comment. So I've been participating in the Citizen Police Academy, which has been fantastic. Learned a ton, would highly recommend it. I got to go on a ride-along last week with the third downtown police officer who was added just in November, Officer Fonte. And I just wanted to commend you that I feel like it was a great learning experience for me. It was great to see officers in action. We talked to so many people downtown. He knew almost everyone. I mean, it was quite impressive. So I feel like in terms of community policing and with the other chief here, we ran into your crews a couple times helping out some incapacitated individuals who needed some additional assistance. Also, just kind to people, talked to them, just did a really great job. So I just wanted to give you both a thumbs up I got to see it firsthand, what these guys do every day, and it was impressive to me. So thank you, and please pass that on.
Thank you for the comments. I will do that. Mayor?
Anything else?
So Mayor, Councilmember Shireki is online. And
Thank
has a
you.
question.
Yes, Councilmember Tricky, go ahead.
And I don't know why we lost it.
We may have lost you. It looks like a pretty black screen there.
He's on my screen, so I think it's an issue.
Dan, if you can hear us.
Now can you hear me?
Now we can hear you. That sounds great. We can't see you, but we can hear you. Now we can see you. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, Kevin's trying to block me out of the meeting. So Chief, I have three that I hope are fairly quick questions. The first one is, in your opinion, when should we be taking a look at something like the CPSM review again?
If I understand you, you're take a look at CPSM recommendations to see if we're still in line or other things that we can implement. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, asking them to come back.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ask them to come back. That had always been a discussion point early on. I don't think quite so soon, however, that it was probably, 6, 7 years down the road to see how it is, to give things time to take. But that was always the plan. I know, talking to Mr. Kukulski, when it started, is that the one and done wasn't, that's nice, but it doesn't tell you anything. And so, I certainly would anticipate they would come back at some time.
Okay. Can you give us a brief overview of where the city and the state are towards having a better data system?
Zero status on that. We're not working with them specifically on any creation of new data. Matter of fact, we are, making sure that our current system, specifically with criminal records, NCIC, and local CJIN, CJIN they call it, that we are meeting our expectations and qualifications and requirements there. As far as the establishment of new data sharing, to my knowledge, that is not underway. At least it's not with us.
Okay. Yeah, I do know that there was some legislation to fund some stuff along those lines, but I have no idea what their status was.
Council member, I think that was directed a lot at probation, parole, and corrections to find out just exactly how many and who is where. That was a discussion coming out of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and some of the early advisors, but we have not been involved in anything.
Okay, thank you. And I would just like to hear your thoughts on where we are right now with community policing and where, if anywhere, we should be thinking about going towards in the future.
Well, community policing is a concept that, we embrace as part of our mission statement. I think the downtown officers really embody what community policing looks like in their day-to-day operations. Second would be our school resource officers, and then our parks officer. It really is, I think those are the the units that really, as I said, embody what community policing looks like. The thing for us to be able to spend a lot of time in the neighborhoods, talking with people, really is all resource driven. If I have to run from call to call, I just don't have time to do that. And so we can do better on the neighborhood end of things. I think we do a very good job making sure that we hit neighborhood task force meetings, that we respond to requests to speak at various functions. So I would give us probably a C+ on overall community policing philosophy operation right now.
Do you have any sense, as a follow-up to that, do you have any sense, so like, let's say we were to expand from downtown, what we're doing downtown, to one neighborhood, are we collecting the data here in Billings that would inform us as to where we might do that? And do you have any sense as to where that might be?
Absolutely. That would go to our analytics, hotspot mapping, our dedicated policing. I mean, we know who our problematic people are. We know where they live, and we know where they're operating out of. And so if they happen to be in the neighborhood and we're in a situation where we can implement the community policing philosophy there, it will pay it'll pay dividends on that. I know there had been discussion offline about other programs, which are the risk, risk, what is it, risk terrain something or other, which essentially takes the people element out of it and looks at the location and then incidents specifically. And we feel that our crime analysts can do that given some additional resources and tools. Right now, that is a proprietary product that we got to go out and buy. And so that is an option. Again, our analytics are very robust, just a matter of what you want and what we're pulling out and what we're getting. The stuff that you saw in the Friday report was just a small example of what a hotspot map looked like, compared it 21 to 22, and then the incident map told you the reductions in our respective zones. So again, it's stats and whatnot and what it is that we want to pull out of there. And so we need to narrow down what it is you want to know. And then for us, that's what drives our operations. And when I have people to do that, they're not running from call to call to call, that's when we're most effective. And that played out in last year's numbers in a couple areas.
Okay, thank you. Is that it, Councilor Tricky?
Yeah, I could go on for hours. Thank you very much, Chief.
Well, we do have 3 other departments, so we should not do that. Anything from anybody who didn't already have anything for the chief? If not, we'll move on to the next department. Okay, thank you, Chief. Much apprecited.
Mayor, thank you.
Keep up the good work. Our next, I think the fire department is next for us. Chief Valdez.
We're good there. So good evening, Mayor, Council. This last year has been another year of significant change within our department. The focus this year was on implementation of new programs, recruit training, and facilities maintenance. FY23 triggered everything from service delivery model change to finding more efficiencies in addition to the CPSM study. So this slide gives a breakdown of personnel with no additional authorized FTE from FY23 budget year. We have filled all the positions for the MRTs, specialized positions, and we will be filling the 2 crew positions in the near future. This is the operating budget. Total public safety fund expenditures are approximately 25.8 mil. with personnel services costs representing 83%. Expenditures are up about $554,000 or 2.1% from last year, mostly due to inflation of equipment, utilities, and insurance. Capital in this fund refers mostly to deferred building maintenance and equipment. And in FY24, deferred maintenance will be down approximately $245,000 from last year, as we needed to shift monies from building to purchase a new engine and 2 brush rigs that weren't fully funded due to that inflation I was talking about earlier. This slide shows the total of all of our divisions. This further breaks down the operating budget to include the 911 center and crew. MRTs, mobile response teams. So during FY23, the MRT program had 1 squad that has been in service since December 1st. Recruits for the newest squad are finishing up their academy. Therefore, the second squad will be in service July 1 and housed at Station 5 for a West End assignment. As of April 25th, Squad 1 responded to 959 calls for service and is projected to respond to anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000 calls for the calendar year. Fuel consumption numbers were not where we expected them to be, because that was my stance the whole time, was reducing wear and tear and fuel. But that was 1 vehicle, and the vehicle that was used was not for its intended purpose. We used a different type of vehicle just to get the program up and running. We do have our new vehicles. You can see the photos of what they look like there. That's what we'll be using moving forward, and pretty excited about getting those on board, and hopefully we can get those fuel consumption numbers down. And going back to how many responses for just that 1 MRT, we can only imagine what 2 is going to do. If you're talking about the neighborhood of 6,000 calls between 2 vehicles, that's 6,000 less calls that our engines are going on, so it's significantly saving us in wear and tear. The average response time for Squad 1 was approximately 1 minute less than your average engine response time, which we're pretty darn excited about there. You're in the neighborhood of about a 6-minute response time for an engine, where the squads are going to be hitting, on average, about a 5-minute response time. And crew, crisis response. So finalizing with both legal departments, start the hiring process here soon for us. I believe Rimrock has already initiated their hiring process for their mental health professionals. We're completing the vehicle prep. So basically what we're doing is, 1 MRT is in the process right now of getting finished with its vehicle prep. When that one is done, then the crew unit will go in and have everything done to be ready for service, and then we'll kick the second MRT unit in there, and we should be ready to have all 3 units ready to go by July. So anticipated start date for the crew would be July. 911 Communications Center. So this has been a challenge for us year over year. We continue to have difficulty with recruitment and retention, but we are starting to see more applicants, mostly in part due because of the new program that HR implemented with the NeoGov program. The feedback that we're getting from that is it's more user-friendly, and so people are actually completing the applications and aren't frustrated and giving up. So we're pretty excited about that. So we're hoping the recruitment side will start to come up, but then retention remains an issue. And so what we're trying to do with that is for someone to be fully trained in the 911 center, to know all aspects of that, it takes about 36 months. So we're thinking we can cut that down to about 18 months. And again, on those exit interviews, what the feedback is it's just too much information. So what we're going to do to cut that in half is move people into specialized areas. So they can go into, say, fire and stay there until they're proficient in fire. And at their choosing, they can move on to law enforcement and pick up that certification and begin that training. So that's the model that we think we may go to, and hopefully, fingers crossed, that'll help us out there. Also moving to standardized protocols for ease of call taking. Essentially, that's just new software that helps to take a lot of the decision-making process out of it and letting the CAD pick up a lot of that. Also implementing new weekly QA/QI programs to address issues sooner. The new radio system is on track to go live January 2024. And then another thing that we're excited about is we're adding proximity dispatching to priority dispatching. And basically proximity dispatching is once again allowing the CAD system to take a lot of the guesswork out of who's going where. So as an example, for decades, we have been based on run area. So if a call dropped in 5's area, then that's who was expected to go, was engine 5. Well, now say engine 2 happens to be in 5's area, and they happen to be closer, the CAD will pick up the AVL and automatically send that unit, and that takes a lot of the human element out of it, kind of going the AI route, if you will. Facilities projects. So this has been a bit of a challenge for us, simply due to shortages on supplies and people that just flat out want to work. But we are in the process right now of finishing out the new HVAC system for Station 1, a new sump pump for Station 2. We've hit a couple snags there. We may have some root problems, or we may have a collapsed line. So I'll keep you filled in on that one. New bathroom remodel for Station number 5. The tiles are actually falling off the wall, and found out the tiles have asbestos in them. So we're going to completely gut the bathroom at Station 5. And it's one big dormitory style bathroom, so we're going to split it into 2. We also had to replace a fuel tank monitor, which was not cheap at a cost of about $13,000. A new roof for Fire Station 7 was completed, I believe, in September or October of last year. The problem with that brand new roof is when they put the paint on it, they didn't prime it. And so the paint is already starting to chip. So now they're going to completely strip the roof off and put a brand new one on at their cost. A brand new fuel tank at Station 7. We figured that a quarter of the miles and the hours that are on that engine itself is due to the fact that it had to come into Station 3 or 5 just to get fuel. So it's burning fuel and adding hours just to get fuel. So now it has its own tank. We should see those numbers start to come down as well. And then in the new security access system for all of our stations, and essentially that's just a timestamp for who's going into our stations and when for more security. And it'll be tied in with the rest of the city's facilities. Moving forward, new windows and kitchen remodel for Station 1. These are all original from 1973. I can tell you I wear a jacket all winter long in my own office with 2 heaters going. Windows don't work anymore, so replace concrete ramps for Stations 2 and 3. We did not get this project accomplished for FY23, and we don't anticipate we will. We did have our facilities manager set up a time for contractors to come and take a look at these projects, and the contractors never showed. So these are some of the problems that we're dealing with, trying to get these things done. Upgrade our fuel systems for all stations, and essentially that's new pumps for 5 of our fire stations. Again, these are original pumps, and they're actually pretty antiquated, and you could probably get a good deal on them for eBay or something like that. Redesign and install landscaping at Station 6. As you all know, we pay for the water up there, and it's very expensive. And so we'd like to zero-scape some of that property up there to cut back on how much water we're using. Improvements to training facility to maintain code and compliance and enhance some of our training aspects up there. And then finish the flooring. We started this project about 2 or 3 years ago to gut all the fire stations, get the carpet out of them, because carpet harbors bad things for us. So anything but carpet is better. So that's what we're doing there, and we should have that wrapped up this year as well. Fire Station 8. So Station 8 is still in the review process with planning and building. And once it's done with that, as soon as it's out of the review process, we'll go out for RFP to take care of the interior, all of the remodel for the interior. So for now, we're currently working on everything exterior. We've got a brand new shed out there. We put brand new doors on it. We'll have a security system on that as well. Flagpole fence, I believe, started today, if I'm not mistaken, and we've done some landscaping up there. The target date was supposed to be August 1st, but we've gotten held up a little bit, so we're looking at late fall. And once that's open, the Squad 1 and the crew will be stationed from there. So it will be operational as soon as it's ready to go. CPSM recommendations. So we're still at 94% of recommendations. Some of these recommendations are taking longer. I'll skip down to emergency management rep. So what that is we've got so many different programs going on right now. We just haven't addressed that. So essentially, we're just going to find who in our department will wear another hat. We're just going to add duties to this individual to be a liaison with DES in the county. Emergency Operations Center. We have an emergency management advisory board that the mayor sits on with me. We're working with the county on what type of EOC we want and where it's going to be located. So that's why some of those are taking longer, but they're in process or in progress. And then the CPSE accreditation and credentialing. So credentialing is for the individual. I was the guinea pig with that. I started out, took about a year to get done, to get my designation, and since then we've had about 2 or 3 other individuals in our department that have started the process and or completed. And then accreditation is a process that we're looking at. I just sent 4 people to a 3-day workshop to learn this process, and it's pretty arduous. It takes about 3 to 5 years. So if you take our ISO audits, our ESCI report that was done in 2018, the CPSM report that was done in 2020, and a strategic plan, and roll that all into one, it's a full, all-encompassing process and accreditation to see where our gaps are for level of service. So it's a pretty major undertaking. And goals. So to continue to hone the dispatch efficiencies for greater level of service and reduce response, we just spoke about that. We're continually trying to come up with new ideas on the 911 center, constantly tweaking it to see what we can squeeze out of it for better efficiency. Pursue a more secure EMS system for our community. Essentially what that means is we're just watching the system. Our partners are doing a fantastic job. They're keeping up on their end as best they can, but they continually tell us they're having trouble hiring new paramedics and so forth. And so we're just watching and continuing to work with them. And with the service agreement that we have in place that will expire July of 24, there may be some tweaks to that as well to make sure that we're doing the best we can on the EMS side of the house. Continue to build relationships with neighboring agencies, and then continue to work on a 3, 5, 10-year facilities maintenance and construction plan. And so Station 8 was a godsend for us, fell into our laps for us. It moved us ahead in the process by quite a bit. Don't be surprised, in about 3 years, we're talking about a Station 9 on the west end, out in the Shiloh corridor, the southwest side of town. And I'd say right after that, depending on what the Interbelt Loop does, don't be surprised if we're talking about a Station 10 up by the airport. Continue with goals, continue to develop cooperative city-county. We talked about the EOC. Implement the crisis response unit, and research and implement methods for better recruitment and retention. And then also, in addition to the CPSM recommendations, continue searching for ways to increase efficiencies. In conclusion, numerous changes in our organization with growth in new deployment models. We're trying to catch our breath with all these. This is the first time in one fiscal year that I've ever known that we had 2 recruit classes and 2 full recruit classes of 10 and 12 individuals, and that included attrition as well. So our training department's been very busy, and we're just trying to catch our breath to see what these new programs are going to look like for this next fiscal year. Continue exploring innovative ways to offset costs, and then start to build a 3 to 5 year strategic plan in anticipation of the city's continued growth. questions?
Very good, thank you. Chief, could you just maybe comment on how the lack of ambulance service outside of Billings is impacting your department, if at all, in particular the 911 Communications Center? We hear a lot about the lack of ambulance in the county.
So AMR is doing a lot better job. We've been barking at them quite a bit. I know they're doing their absolute best. There's another small ambulance. I believe they have one unit that is just strictly dedicated to the county to help out with that. But AMR, it sounds like in as far as the 911 system goes, they're still the priority. And so it doesn't happen as much as it used to, but occasionally there will be a call that gets dropped in the city because they're out in the county. But I would say the impact from last year when I was standing here is a lot less.
Great, thank you. Other questions for the chief? Councilmember Gila, Councilmember Troy?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. In terms of facilities, there's things you're dealing with that sound kind of reactive in nature. I know we're working with the facilities department now to, is there a plan to move from kind of more reactive to more proactive nature? Like the fact that you're having to sit in an office with 2 heaters on and still be in a coat, we don't obviously want that, but it's also probably we're spending a lot of money, obviously, in utilities to do that. And I think if we had a more proactive approach of just looking at the utilities, like with the Energy Stars portfolio manager, we'd be able to identify how that building is comparing to peers and identify that one's a real problem. And I know the facilities department is still coming up to speed and your relationship but is that part of the plan going forward, is to have a more proactive approach to facilities?
Absolutely, it is. As you know, our facilities, they are getting older. We are constantly trying to play catch up. And thankfully, Chris helped us out with this probably 2 or 3 years ago with your permission to implement a deferred maintenance program. Unfortunately, as we fix the things that we target, some of those things that have been targeted have to fall down in priority because we have to be reactive. As an example, we had a boiler that went out at Fire Station 1 and they're without hot water in the dead of winter for a good month. And then once that got put in place, then we had CO issues, carbon monoxide issues with it because it wasn't opening properly to vent, so we had to fix that. And so it's just been things like that have just been catching us left and right. But you're right, the new facilities person, we did actually have this program implemented a little over a year ago, but we lost that individual. And so we just got a new person on board about 2 months ago, and we actually have a meeting coming up probably next month, I believe, at what we call a facilities call out. And so this individual is going around looking at the more minute and details of these buildings and what we need to grab and get and try to get ahead of these things. So,
thank you. And now just I'll send to the council and staff just a chart, an illustration, I think, of what deferred maintenance does in terms of the costs over time. So that might be helpful for you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Troy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I thought Councilmember Gulick was going to suggest solar panels on the roofs of our fire stations to help lower our costs. So who knows? Maybe that's in the works. Right now, it sounds like a little bit like this old firehouse kind of. You fix one thing and then another thing breaks. But anyway, I wanted to ask a question about the mobile response teams and the crew teams. You've listed your goals, and it looks like you want to really, really look at efficiencies. But are there any larger goals that you're really looking at? I mean, those were identified in our study as bringing efficiencies for wear and tear on our engines. But what larger community goals might we be able to achieve through the mobile and the crew team?
The bigger picture, and that's an excellent question. So the mobile response team is like level 1 of a community paramedicine program. And it's the first step. Crew would be that second step in that process. And then the third step is an actual community paramedicine program. And what that looks like is actually having relationships with people that need definitive care and being proactive. This is the non-reactive side. And so you are literally having appointments with these people, giving them checkups in home, and making sure that they're doing all their follow-ups with their doctors and so on and so forth. And that's what a full-on program looks like. And so that would be the ultimate goal for us moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions, Councilmember Owen?
Chief, I have a couple. We talked a little bit about rural EMS. I'd like to hear a little more about rural fire, BUFSA, what's going on with some of those demands pulling you out of the city.
So ironically, the call volume or calls for service in the BUFSA have remained the same for about the last 3 years. The problem is our calls for service inside the city continue to grow at an average of about 5%, a little over 5% year over year. And so it makes it harder for us to go out there. And I'll give you an example. Thankfully, we have Station 8 in place, and we'll move forward with that as we go, as we find funding. But Station 9 is going to be imperative for us, and it's in that southwest part of town. And that's where we get drawn the most. And Station 7 and 5, which is on 24th Street West, have to come all the way out of their run areas to get to that area. And we're seeing on average about 2 to 3 calls a day hitting in that area. Now, half of it's in the city limits and half of it's not. And so it's going to be imperative that we address this here coming up, because I don't know if you've been out there lately, but it's growing fast. You've got a reservoir that's going to go out there soon, and that's going to make things go even faster. You got a medical school out there. Now you've got 4 school districts that consolidated and are talking about putting a high school out that way. So, and I know for a fact Albertsons told me that they're looking at property. So if they're looking at property, they expect it to grow as well. So, so with the BUFSA, the hard part about it is time and distance, which is our biggest enemy. Again, so not calls for service are not increasing, but our demands inside the city are, which is making it harder on us. So,
Great. And if I could just ask one more question. I am concerned that the city as a whole, not any one department, but holistically, that we're not focusing on and prioritizing emergency response, hazard mitigation, sort of writ large, that we're not where we should be. Is that a fair concern? Do you have that concern? What do you think sort of needs to happen in that preparation category?
in terms of resources within the city,
Resources, training, prioritization, all of it, yes. What do you see when you look at emergency response, hazard mitigation, our general preparedness?
so we will need to continue to grow the resources as the city goes and the demands go up. Right now, I believe that the one MRT has greatly impacted us in a positive way. 2, fantastic. And then the crew will also help with a more focused area, which helps to relieve some of the pressure off our engine companies. So,
I'm talking disaster planning.
so are you talking, okay, I'm sorry.
That's
My
okay.
apologies.
I'm
So-
talking EOC, disaster planning, hazard mitigation, all of those
My
things.
apologies,
That's
okay. Yep, so EOC, again, working with emergency, we just formed this group probably about a year ago in conjunction with the County Emergency Managers Advisory Committee and addressing some of this. We're working on continuity of operations plan along with the county. And I'm not sure what Casey has in the works, but I think he's trying to develop a countywide disaster drill. We have a drill with the airport coming up here on May 18th. So we're starting to, that's been put on the back burner for a while to address some of our more pressing issues, but it's now starting to come back.
So do you feel better, or do you think we're still quite a
I
bit
feel
behind?
better, but we're still behind.
Okay, thank you. Thank
Yes.
you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Other questions for the chief? Councilmember Purinton and Councilmember Rupsis, did you have your hand up? Okay, Councilmember Purinton.
So, thanks, Chief. I'm still concerned about the Operations Center at 911 and how you plan to mitigate, I don't know if it's you, Casey, who all is involved in trying to figure out what happens if the BBW does break. There is a flood downtown. I hear there were sandbags, but I'm not sure sandbags is going to do the job. So are there additional plans? Is it a work in
This
progress?
is Danny. I'm not hearing anything.
Okay, thank you.
It's on.
It's on. Just see if you can put it a little closer to your mouth. We'll see if that makes any difference.
Sure. So the question was, Danny, whether or not the or the fire department, EOC, Casey's team, how they are coming about with working on any mitigation for flooding of the operations center, because that's where all the equipment is.
Yeah, so excellent question. We actually just met just recently, I believe it was last month. Chief St. John's gone, but he headed up the committee for us, brought the entire county in, including the BBWA, for the mitigation aspect of it. We do have a plan in place for the 911 center and Station 1. It's reactionary, of course, as far as planning ahead and preparation. I know that Public Works is working their tail off with BBWA, but on our end, we do have, like you said, sandbags, 5-inch hose lines, jersey barriers ready to go. And I would say if you had to prioritize, it would be the 911 center and then Station 1 for us.
Just follow up, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
So is there any talk about moving that equipment? I know it's going to be expensive, but is there any talk about moving?
So with our 911 center, we do actually have the capability of being mobile. We can move smaller hardware to a different location and do the same things should the need arise.
Thank you, Councilor Rupsis.
Great. Thanks, Mayor. Chief, two things. One, real quick and easy. I think there was an article just in the Gazette like a week or two ago about the mobile response units, and they showed a F550 as opposed to the Explorers in here. Was that what you were talking about in the change of equipment? And then the other thing, I asked Chief St. John about his goals, department goals for the year. They're largely identical. Yours are word for word from last year. Was there really nothing we accomplished last year that can't go off the list, nothing new to enhance and with any degree of specificity for this year's goals?
So to answer your first question, yes, you're absolutely right. The F550 was not intended for that. That was just to get the program up and going, and it is not a fuel efficient vehicle for us. And that's why our fuel is flat. For question number two, I believe I told the Finance and Budget Committee, this next year, we've gotten so many programs in the queue, new programs, that we just want to take a little bit of time and actually see what they're going to do. I don't know if you remember, but when we were asking for these during the Public Safety Mill Levy, I said that it would take about 12 to 18 months to compile good, solid data for us and make sure that we're on that right path. And that's the intent. And in the meantime, we wanted to just continually tweak on some of the things that we do have in place. We've got so many new programs going.
Thank you. Other questions for the chief? Not seeing anything else, Chief, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on then. Next item up is our legal department, I guess, according to our staff report.
No, I almost left that slide in, but. Mayor, council, according to Andy, forget fire and forget police, the city attorney's office is the true heroes. We're the fighting crime since 1882. He had a slide in there earlier for me with Superman on there, but I did take it out, so. Okay, so just a reminder about your, what your legal department does. We consist of two divisions, criminal and civil divisions. Your civil division provides you and city boards and the city departments support and legal advice, legal opinions. We provide risk management services, drafting your documents, legal docs, ordinance, resolutions. We don't have a litigation division because we don't have the capacity to handle litigation in-house, but we do some things in-house, and we handle our own arbitrations, any administrative agency hearings, things like that. Your criminal division, of course, prosecutes the misdemeanor offenses and the resulting appeals and sentence revocations, and we have a dedicated domestic violence unit, which consists of 3 prosecutors and 3 victim witness specialists. We also have a dedicated prosecutor assigned to the treatment court. Your civil division consists of 4 attorneys, myself, the assistant city attorney, and we have 2 civil deputies. The criminal division consists of 8 prosecutors and 5 victim witness specialists. And then our administrative support staff, we have 5 of them. They support the entire office. As you can see, we have in our criminal division, we have 3 vacant positions. We're trying to fill the 2 new positions, and then one of our prosecutors recently resigned, so now we have 3 vacant that we're trying to fill. And in our administrative supports, it's just showing you 1 vacant position, but we actually just hired, so she will be starting next week. So we do have some specific goals and objectives that we are trying to achieve, and those are listed in the budget overview that you have. I've listed a few of them here, but we are obviously trying to be a critical part of the city's leadership team, providing some proactive legal advice and providing risk management services to council, the city departmental staff, and I've listed a few of the goals here, but the one I really want to highlight, the one we've been focusing on most intensively over the last few years and now, is to prosecute criminal cases in a timely and efficient manner in the best interests of victims of crime, the citizens of Billings, and in the interest of justice. To achieve this goal, we are adding 7 positions as a result of the public safety mill levy funding. We are hiring 2, so the 7 new positions consist of 3 prosecutors and 4 support staff. We are trying to hire 2 of those positions now, and that 3rd prosecutor, we will wait to assess how things are going with those 2 new prosecutors, see what our needs are, and obviously wait till we have more office space. And if we do need that last prosecutor, we will determine when that hiring should occur. And same thing with the 4 support staff. We've already hired 1 victim witness specialist. We did that last year after the mill levy, and we will wait to assess the needs after we get moved and see how things are with the new prosecutors to determine where our needs are if we do need to hire those positions. One important thing that we included in this, the mill levy funded positions, is to dedicate a code enforcement person within our office. We currently do have an attorney assigned to code enforcement, but he's very busy with other duties, so he isn't able to, he's not dedicated to code enforcement. And code enforcement, as you know, with their new hires and their more staffing, they have more needs, and so it's important for us to get that dedicated either paralegal or an attorney or a half attorney or 3/4 of an attorney we need to dedicate a person to that, but we do have some office-based issues right now to do that. So we are making do with how we have been handling it. So you can see here, our new cases open from 2022, we have over 5,000 new cases. As you can see from the last couple of years, that's down. So I don't know what to attribute that to, but that's good news that our total cases, that's all criminal and traffic. As you can see, there are the cases reviewed for charges or warrants, that's a little over 1,800. That number is actually contained within the 5,072. However, the cases that we've received to review for revocation of sentence or revocation of probation, that number is over 3,100. That number is not contained within the 5,072. So we have received over 3,100 cases to review to revoke somebody's sentence or to revoke their probation for their lack of abiding by the terms of their probation. They haven't paid fines, or they didn't do their treatment, or they didn't go to treat the ACT or any of the programs that they were supposed to have done. This will show you where we are now. So the trend over the last several years has gone up with a big spike in 2019, and we are appears to maybe be coming down a little bit. This, as you can see from the top line, the first 4 months we're at 1,375. So if the trend stays, will be a reduced number. So let's hope for that. But the first 4 months isn't really always indicative of how the year will turn out. Our average caseload per prosecutor, you can see, is currently, to the far right, currently our domestic violence prosecutors are at 542. That's their average caseload. And the non-DV prosecutors are at 957 for their average caseload. So the first two sections there, the first 4 bars, are when we had 4 prosecutors. So you can see those numbers were pretty high for the average caseload. We added a non-DV prosecutor in 2020, and that's the middle one that shows you it brought down that average caseload significantly for the non-DV prosecutors. In 2020, we had a huge spike of DV cases when everybody was at home, stuck at home during the pandemic with their spouses. So DV cases skyrocketed. At that point, we just had one domestic violence prosecutor, and he was handling those all himself. In 2021, thanks in part due to some grant funding, we were able to add a domestic violence prosecutor, so that helped with that average caseload. But as you can see, we're still at a pretty high rate, and we'd really like to get the domestic violence prosecutors at about 300 to 400 cases. That would be a more manageable caseload for them. And the non-domestic violence prosecutors, it is a little bit more difficult to say, but in the 500 to 700 range. That all depends on complexity of cases. You have to adjust accordingly, but somewhere in that range would be the target caseload average. This slide is, I've shown you this before. It gives you an idea of how we're doing in filing cases. So the second column there is showing you how many domestic violence cases we received over the last several years, and it's continued to go up from 824 and last year up to 1,084. And conversely, the last column is showing you how many were able to get filed. So in 2016, we're at 70%, and in 2022, our rate of filing was at 45%. So you can see kind of when you look at how many we're getting as opposed to how many we're able to file, they're kind of at capacity. The DV prosecutors are really kind of at capacity around 500. I mean, it's really difficult for them to handle a caseload that high. So that's why adding this third one will be really good. You can see here that there's kind of an anomaly in 2021. That was the year that we added the domestic violence prosecutor that was partially grant funded. And so before he actually handled a full caseload, he spent about 4.5 months just filing, just trying to get us caught up on the backlog. So he did a great job. We had a ton, you can see the rate at 71%. But then once the person stopped filing and was actually handling the cases, we're back down to 45%. So we just need another prosecutor, and I think that will get us to the target range. We want to be at around 65-70% of cases filed, and I think that's a more reachable, reasonable target. This slide is breaking down the domestic violence cases a little bit for you to give you an idea of what those look like. This last one is just the total DV cases that we received, and this one's kind of breaking it down. So that first column, the bottom is the 1,084. That's the same from the last slide, but it's showing you partner, family member assault, violation of no contact order, violation of order of protection, sexual assault, privacy and communication stalking. It breaks them down. So we had about 681 cases for partner, family member assault. We had 337 files, so that's showing you 49% rate of filing. The other two columns, counts referred and counts filed. That's a greater number because sometimes within the partner or family member assault, there might be 2 counts, or a sexual assault case might also have a partner or family member assault case. So those first 2 columns are unique individual cases, but then the counts referred, maybe because there were additional counts within a case. Moving on to public records requests, just to give you an idea of how many of those we've been receiving. They are really shooting up. The last several years, 19 and 20 went down a bit for some reason, but they're astronomical at this point. We're just getting so many. We're at 117 right now. So if that rate continues, and I think it will, just because we're getting so many all the time, that we're going to be at right about double of where we were at 2017. So I saved the best for last. Here's the slide you've all been waiting for, our budget slide. We are, obviously our budget is all salary and benefits. About 15% of the budget is O&M, and 85% is personal services at almost 2.6 million. That's an overall increase of 223,740 compared to last year's budget. We are estimated to have a little bit of grant revenue, our VOCA and VAWA grants, about 160, and we usually bring in fines forfeitures about 46,000. So our challenges are kind of the same that we've been facing. We have this office space issue, but we've kind of worked through how we're going to handle that until we get to the new building. We've figured out how to add those new positions. It kind of involves some more office sharing, sending some people to work more remotely, but we've worked through that so that we can get those positions filled. The problem is getting those positions filled. We're not having the same pool of applicants that we used to see. I'm attributing that mostly to the fact that we used to have an advantage, a salary advantage over some of the other local agencies. We could draw some from the county, or we could draw some from the Office of Public Defender. Those 2 agencies have upped their salaries. They've kind of fixed that problem, so we're not drawing them from those agencies, and we're not bringing them into Billings from outside of Billings. And we used to have some application. We used to have quite a bit of applications from outside of Billings, but that's not happening now. And the only thing I can attribute that to is the housing problem. It's hard to, an attorney want to move here if it's hard to buy a house and it's expensive. So I don't know. That's just a thought. That's maybe one of the issues there. But we have seen some successes. First of all, we made it through the legislative session relatively unscathed in the criminal arena, so that's good. There aren't any bad bills that the prosecutors need to contend with. The disorderly conduct statute I'm told was fixed. I haven't seen it on the site. I've been trying to find it, but the disorderly conduct offense apparently is back to the pre-2017 version where the jail time has been replaced or been restored. We had hoped that the theft offense would be the same, but that bill died. Our one of our domestic violence prosecutors, Ben Halverson, I think you all know him, he spent a significant amount of time testifying on several issues of interest, specifically to our office and the city as a whole. There were a couple bills, Senate Bill 12 and House Bill 692 were bills that focused on shifting costs of public defenders to local governments, and we opposed those based on the significant cost that it would impose on the city. And fortunately, Senate Bill 12 was tabled in House Judiciary, and House Bill 692 was tabled in Senate Judiciary. We also supported House Bill 916, which will require the OPD, Office of Public Defender, to account for cases in which costs of counsel are not ordered by a judge. And I'm sure as you probably all know, the OPD has historically claimed, without really any basis, that the city of Billings has caused a lot of their budget shortfalls. And so House Bill 916 is a good long-term investment for addressing bills like Senate Bill 12 and House Bill 692 in the future. Another bill to note, Ben also testified in support of House Bill 661, which would allow courts to consider dangerousness and lethality assessments when setting bond and setting conditions of release. Previously, judges were pretty reluctant to consider those assessments without legislative authority to do so. And that bill passed unanimously in both houses. Another good thing, the VOCA award is increasing. So Ben also worked throughout the interim session, and he testified 3 times during the session to boost funding to VOCA through an appropriation in the budget bill, House Bill 2. So prior to that, Montana was one of less than 10 states that did not fund victim services out of the general fund. And so previously, our annual VOCA award was about $75,000 a year, with awards expected to decrease in the next several fiscal years. But the passage of this bill resulted in $2 million per year for the next 2 years to supplement VOCA statewide. And so that increased our appropriation. The increased VOCA appropriation should increase our share to 120 per year instead of the 75 per year that we've been getting. It's not official yet. It needs to be a stamp of approval by the Board of Crime Control, but that's what we're expecting, so that's good news. And I also noted the franchise fee case is nearing its end. While it's not done and over, maybe we can't quite celebrate yet, it's still welcome news after litigating for 4.5 years. So with that, I would take any questions.
Very good, thank you. Questions for Gina? Councilmember Braun.
Gina, I have just a handful with the general scope of trying to understand if we're resourcing enough for some critical priorities. So how many, do you have any ballpark sense right now? And if not, you can just email. How many unfiled charges or warrants do we have right now?
I would need to get back to you. And
Would
let me
you?
grab my pen so that
Go
I
ahead,
don't
yep.
forget to write down what you're looking for. Unfiled warrant requests?
Charges and warrants, yep.
Okay.
Because I want to get a sense of how far behind we are.
Okay.
And
Yes,
and
I
think it's not insignificant.
it's not insignificant. Like I said earlier, with, when we brought on that second DV prosecutor, did a great job getting that backlog down, but it's just built right back up.
Yep.
And it's significant.
Yeah, I thought so. Are you seeing any benefit from increased efforts to do pretrial supervision and monitoring? Is that making a difference in cutting down on sort of
Well,
issues in between?
that's an interesting issue because in speaking with some of the prosecutors, the pretrial supervision is great. I mean, we want them supervised, right? But when they don't appear, it creates more warrants. And
So it's not fixing that issue, is what you're saying?
I'm not sure that it is. And the judge may have a different, better perspective, but I'm not sure that it is.
Some of the things that we've talked about offline is, there are things that we want to happen, but there just aren't people to do them, right? And so one of those things is better collaboration between the city and the county working together. How are those efforts going? Do we have the personnel and resources to build those relationships for more streamlined and effective prosecution, sharing information, getting evidence quickly disseminated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
I think we're working on that, but both of our offices are just so busy, and we don't have anybody dedicated liaisons for that. So it's difficult to do that, but we are working on like a multidisciplinary team, and there are efforts being made. And we're constantly trying to, and I know the courts are constantly trying to work together too. So there are efforts. It's maybe not as streamlined as it could be.
What level of person does that have to be? Does that have to be a prosecutor? Is it a paralegal? Is it an admin? What does that have to be?
Well, I think to be effective, it probably needs to at least be a prosecutor or
Okay.
above.
And Mayor, one last question.
Sure.
Let's talk generally about how we tackle the staffing issue, because
How we tackle what?
staffing.
Okay.
So, we have this issue of you need to hire and we need more attorneys in the community, but OPD needs to hire and they're going to have to hire more with some of the bills that were passed. I don't have a good sense of how many of the cases that your office is prosecuting have OPD on the other side. But I'm really concerned that we just don't have the workforce we need to do what the public demands. And I want to know what our strategies are to start addressing that.
Well, sorry, I had to make a note so I can follow up on some stuff later, but that's a really tough question. I don't know how to bring the workforce to Billings. I mean, we have this housing problem that what I see as a housing problem. If a young new prosecutor wants to move to Billings and live where, I mean, even for a prosecutor, it's expensive. We're paying decent wages, so I think people are just staying where they are. In 2021, we had, when we had a vacancy, we had dozens and dozens of applications, and they were coming from out of state, and that was also during the time when people wanted to move to Montana really badly, but we had a ton of applications from out of state and across the state. We just don't see it anymore. So I don't have the answer to that. I would like the answer to that. If you all have ideas, please share them.
Well, I have some ideas I would throw out for us just to consider. And the question here is really, do we have to resource this, right? What is our partnership like with the law school? Can we do clinics? Can we do internships? How do we, if we can't hire experienced prosecutors, which is what we want, can we grow them? And what could we do better? Does the city need to think about a partnership with one of the universities to do summer housing if we want to come down and try to do some clinics? And can we get supervision? I'm just curious about, do we need sort of a person almost to do a little like innovation leadership in the legal department?
Speaking for myself, I think that would be very helpful because just frankly, I don't have time to do that stuff. I'm just working on my daily work and having a hard time getting everything done. So I think that it is a resource issue, somebody to just focus on these things. But I guess I also wanted to note that after the budget committee meeting that we had last week, we are following up on the internship program because we did have a couple of people reach out who were interested in that. And so with our vacancy savings, we have a little bit of room to maybe do such a program. And if it worked well this summer, then maybe that could develop into a more permanent program. And I think that would be really helpful.
Thank you, Councilmember Gillett. Councilmember Choi?
I can just offer some of the sordid tale for High Plains architects, and because we've also been facing similar kinds of things over the last 4 or 5 years, 3 or 4 years, and we've been working with a business consultant, and they said, you got to be serious about, that's part of your job now is finding the people and being really deliberate about that. We started going to the universities, and in both University of Montana and University of Oregon, and we're suddenly had an embarrassment of riches of 4 people straight out of school at our office, which was overloaded us with not enough people with experience to be able to mentor them. And so 2 have moved on. But we've hired a recruiter, you might call it a headhunter. We haven't actually had to close the deal yet, but it is really tough right now out there. But we've just realized we need to be focused. We need, what's the plan? What's the strategy? And asking that question just has made us be more thoughtful and deliberate about it. And so I think the steps you've taken with the internship program sounds good. Yeah, just think about what's the plan.
And I think a recruiter is an excellent idea for our office. I think that would be helpful. I do know that the law school does their spring interview weekend. They do things like that. So we really need to be more involved in that program. And it's finding the time and the person in our office who can do that, who has the time to do that. So.
Thank you, Councilmember Choi.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And I guess maybe that was a previous year, but I really appreciate legal department getting us through that process to get a contract with Charter, and that seemed like a forever thing, and that was accomplished, so I appreciate that. If it was last year's, that's fine. It still deserves a compliment this year.
Thank you.
I want to ask a question, and I'm not thinking that your goals list is a prioritization. I'm thinking they're just bullet points and not a 1, 2, 3. But you have to practice preventative law by being an integral member of the city's departmental teams and providing legal risk management services and proactive legal services. And I'm thinking that should be kind of up there too, because that sounds pretty important. Could you kind of explain a little bit more about what that would mean? Because it sort of sounds like a kind of cost savings, or at least an earlier intervention into something that might turn out to be costly. So maybe you could explain that a little.
Thank you for that question. Yes, definitely. The priorities aren't listed in order because these kind of priorities are kind of all equal importance, and risk management services and providing proactive legal advice is paramount. And we are stressing, we are working on making sure that the different departments who have different issues, that they involve us right up front, which is kind of not always happened. And there are a lot of new department heads now, and things are really changing, and that's much, much better. And of course, I have very limited experience because I've only been in this position for a couple of years, but that's something that we're stressing, that we really need to be involved in issues from the get-go so that we can steer them in the right direction if necessary, or provide the advice up front instead of coming in at the end saying, hold on, you need to back up, you can't proceed this way, and causing some sort of huge major delay. So that's getting all of the department heads involved and understanding that they need to involve us right up front from the beginning of kind of different kinds of projects. They need to learn how to recognize when there may be legal issues that they need to bring us in on, because we can't help if we don't know about it, if we're not involved.
Councilmember Denise, Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Mayor. Gina, I have one question for you, but some of the conversation brought up a couple others. So I'm going to ask you my first question that I had regarding the code enforcement. As you went through the presentation, did I understand you to say that you were holding off hiring the paralegal for code enforcement?
We're not holding, well, sort of. We have an attorney who handles code enforcement issues right now and is doing a good job at handling what they need, but they could use more. They could use an attorney who has more time to dedicate to that, and we haven't determined if an attorney would be best or if it's going to be a paralegal. We're still kind of assessing what their needs are. At this point, to me, it appears that what they're seeking is more legal advice and more guidance and direction from the angle of, well, from an attorney. So that's what I'd really like to see going forward. But yes, we're not there yet. We don't have the ability and space to hire that third attorney. And once we get the other prosecutors in there, that might help free up some time we're still just assessing how we're gonna assign and dedicate that assistance to code enforcement.
Okay, so just to clarify then, the code enforcement is still getting the legal assistance they need.
Absolutely.
It's just that it's at a cost of other work that really needs to be done as well.
Right.
Okay.
Thomas Party is our deputy attorney who handles the code enforcement issues, and he has a lot of other departments assigned to him, and he also handles the public records requests, which are extremely time consuming. So he's juggling a lot of balls.
Okay. And the reason I was asking if a code enforcement workload is so full, maybe the space-wise, you could relocate them to wherever code enforcement is, and that's where they work out of until everything gets moved over. But I sure hope we don't use space as an excuse not to hire someone. If they have to, instead of remote working, they work maybe in another building and then just have to commute a little bit.
And that office, the sharing issue, we have talked about that, and we can definitely go there if necessary, and that's something that Mr. Friday and Tina and I are all kind of, we still, well, it's been some time since we've talked about it, but we're all kind of, the status quo is been okay, so that's why we haven't made any change yet, but it's our goal to provide more to them.
Yeah, I think that more and sooner we get the attorneys that we need, the sooner that bottleneck of the legal process will go away. And so I encourage you to do what we can on that. The other question I had came up when you're talking about hiring attorneys. So do you do all the recruiting and do all of that, or does HR do that?
HR does they do all the posting and I guess technically the recruiting, but really the recruiting kind of consists of posting it in different areas for us at the law school. And
okay, so they're just posting it, but not an active recruiting like a recruiter would. Okay.
No.
All right, maybe that's something we need to, especially with the labor shortage we have now, maybe we need to look at doing something different within our HR department to boost that recruiting portion. And then the other question I had is some of your goals and also code enforcement. You do a lot of work for the other departments. And so does all of that filter down and the other departments pay for that to fund your department for all of these additional requests and new attorneys we're hiring? So it's not just your budget that we're having to tax, but it's being spread out through all the other departments.
it is. Mhm.
Okay.
That's correct.
And then one last question, Mayor. Do any of the other departments have their own attorneys?
No, but there are occasions where the other departments, in consultation with our office, hire outside counsel on certain complex issues that we just
projects.
don't have the expertise in.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Purington, and we'll try to take a break so we can get to our municipal court. Councilmember
Perfect.
Purington?
Thank you. So that was one of my concerns, was the out-of-house litigators. What is the budget for that? Is there a set budget that we will hire, or we just hire whenever we need them?
We generally try to, and Andy may need to help me out here, but we generally try to budget for, in that particular line item for what we see as the need going forward for the next year based on what we have going on, based on the ongoing litigation. It's hard to anticipate what new litigation is going to be occurring, but did Andy stand up? No.
No, he didn't want to answer.
He's doing some quick calculations back there.
So the outside counsel amount I'm trying to find the exact amount. We left it the same amount that it has been. Largely, it's been related to the franchise fee. And I believe that's 250,000. It might be 125 though.
125,000
Yeah,
for the year?
in a year, yes.
I think it's historically been larger than that for the last few years because we had a lot of ongoing litigation with the Waters case and the franchise fee case.
250, yes.
250 is what it's set at.
So just a question, and I'm not advocating for this, but I know that there's different litigation, I know there's different expertise in that. Would another attorney help that can do this? I mean, it just seems that we do have attorneys that the city hires, but yet we're always going, I mean, every
Yeah.
month almost, I
This
see a
is
bill.
Right. This is a question that's come up, I think, a lot. To have an in-house litigation division is certainly something we can explore, but I see a lot of problems with it because the city has so many different departments, there are so many different issues that come up, that the expertise and somebody who specializes the idea that we could have within our litigation division, somebody who could be an expert in every subject matter is really hard to fathom, and which is why you go out to seek the attorney who has the best experience or resources to obtain the knowledge. I don't think one attorney in a litigation division here would be enough. We would need to have administrative support and including legal assistants, paralegals, and I'm not sure that one attorney would be enough when considering litigation and the time and resources that are involved with some of the complex issues that we see.
Well, I don't want to get too far in the weeds because sometimes I kind of question some of the attorneys that we hire, throughout the city. I kind of question that. I don't know if you hire, if Chris hires. I don't know where that, because you're fairly new to town. So how do you know these attorneys and how do you make that judgment who to ask?
Through a referral network of the attorneys that I do know. Attorneys are good about referring out to people that they know have the appropriate experience. And they don't take cases if they can't do them, they refer to others, and that's usually how I determine who's the best
So you
attorney.
basically do the hiring on those outside
Yes,
counsel?
yes.
Okay. So one more question, Mr. Mayor, and I've got to find it here. Oh, so whenever you first started talking, Gina, you were talking about the public safety mill levy funding, and on page 93, it kind of tells you that you have the capability of hiring staff, additional staff over the next 2 to 3 years. So I'm not sure, on the next page, it talks about whether or not those funds have been levied. Are we fully levied from the public safety mill levy? And if so, since we haven't hired some of these people, where does that money go?
So we have 7 that we plan to hire, but they're not all levied for. Only, we plan to hire 3 of the 7, so only those are the ones that are levied for. That's my understanding. Is that correct? Not exactly. Andy's gonna correct me.
So we levied all of the mills that were authorized as part of the levy. Largely, that was in part to get things off the ground so we could buy vehicles, equipment. We knew we wouldn't be hiring staff right away. Additionally, you recall that we used a lot of those reserves we had on hand to get started hiring some of those employees as well. So we had levied all of them to backfill that amount. We are still, in this budget, proposing levying all 34 mills related to the public safety levy as well.
So if I remember, whenever the funding was approved, is that we were doing it specifically for legal to have 7 positions, police having certain positions. But it sounds like we're doing some backfill with those positions, like Gina hasn't hired some of hers. In fact, there, you even said, well, we may not even need them.
Well, when we presented our proposal, excuse me, when we presented our proposal during the mill levy process and when we were educating the public, it was always intended to be stepped in. We didn't never intend to hire all 7 at the beginning. That was not the plan. The plan was to hire in steps, and this is our first step. And I guess I say fingers crossed we won't need them all. I don't think that's gonna happen, but I'm not gonna say right here, we're gonna hire all 7. If we don't need them, we're not gonna hire them, and then I would anticipate they wouldn't be levied for.
Correct. I think what I would just repeat the same thing that the finance director said. Remember, yes, the voters said yes, which we were grateful for. It was a year later before we started collecting money, and we did not wait to start hiring people and ordering equipment and doing the work. So there was 7 figures worth of expenditures that were coming, using up cash. We can unequivocally point that all the 34 mills plus millions are being spent on public safety. That's why you see that transfer coming out of the general fund. So no confusion on public safety money being spent on this levy or prior levies on something else in the general fund. It's not. It's all going for public safety.
Okay, thank you, Gina, thank you, Council. Gina, as you sit down, I'll just make one point on the kind of this internship training, getting help issue. I had a conversation with Brent Brooks years ago, and I'm not sure whether I ever followed up with you at all about this or not, but the program I was familiar with, large law firms, or at least one large law firm, had an arrangement with the local city attorney's office to loan young lawyers to the city attorney's office on a 6-month, 3 to 6 month basis just to give them trial experience, which is very rare and difficult to come by. And the judges, and Judge Kolar is here with us, hated it because those attorneys wanted to take everything to trial, and because that's why they were there. They didn't want to settle anything. But it was good for the attorneys. The city attorney's office didn't have to pay anything for them. They did have to provide a little space, which we don't have, although they probably have their own office. So anyway, I just mentioned that might be that we could work something out. You'd have to decide whether your management time and supervision time would eat up any value there, but that is at least one model as well. So.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, let's take a brief break. It's 7:47. Apologize to our judge and court staff that we're going to have to delay here at 7:47. Let's be back by 7:55, which would be 8 minutes at the latest, 7 minutes now. And we'll start on our last item.
Do we get a start? Is it on?
Yes, the second one in the packet. I'm in the PowerPoint of the packet, which is it's the second set of PowerPoints. Yeah. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. Judge, what does it feel like to be on that end of the gavel? You're not really used to that, are you? You know,
I don't use the gavel.
if you want to rush up and grab this out of my hand, feel free.
I don't use mine, only if it's going to be a weapon. So
Yeah, okay, all right, we don't want that.
I don't.
So welcome back, and Councilmember Tricky, if you're still with us, sometimes it's hard for us to hear or to see you, especially if there's PowerPoints up, so feel free to just say when you have questions, okay? He may or may not be with us.
He's still online, but he walked away from the screen.
Okay, all right, very good. Okay, well, Judge, thank you for your patience, we appreciate it. Sorry we have you last on the list here, but take it away.
So, good evening, council. One request for next year, can I be first on the calendar?
I don't see any reason we can't do that, absolutely.
I'm just requesting that. Oh, you guys have spent plenty of time with me as of late,
This way
right?
we can go till midnight with you.
No, not unless you ask a
Okay.
lot of questions. So I'm going to keep this really short. So again, you guys know that municipal court is courts of limited jurisdiction, and we handle the misdemeanors in the city of Billings. So we have DUIs, drugs, thefts, partner family member assaults before they stack to a felony. A third partner family member assault turns into a felony. DUI is a fourth, is a felony. I also have the federally funded DUI court and the drug court and the co-occurring court. Federally funded, and as I get further down into our presentation, I would really like to get some funding coming through the city and taking an interest in the treatment courts. Not saying that we don't, but it's just every time we run out of the grant funding, we have to reapply for it. And so you know that I have 16 employees, full-time, and 3 grant-funded employees. And we're going to ask for new employees with fiscal year '24 with the safety mill levy. The reason we're asking for that is because we're going to have a new judge, and that new judge is going to need staff. We're not duplicating every one of our staff. We're using them judiciary and economically, but they do need some staff of their own. So this year so far, we've had 12,000 filings so far this year. Hopefully, you know, we're looking at the second full-time judge. We are when the election happens. With a lot of help with different organizations from the county, justice court, district court, we have implemented the PSA again. We used to do it, but they ran out of funding, and this time I think it's a little different. I actually like it a little bit better this time because they're going to be given notifications to defendants of their court dates. When we're going through the court stuff here in a normal day, I give them their paperwork, and they get their paperwork, and we send the paperwork down to the jail. Who reads the paperwork? I don't know. I would hope they would, but with this program, we're going to have probation officers, different organizations who are cooperating with and wanting to be part of this are going to be making calls to individuals, hopefully lower our failures to appear. This year, we've had over 20,000 hearings held. So the overview of the PSA, like I stated, I kind of jumped ahead, but there is funding to hopefully help their subsidies for individuals who, let's say that a prosecutor asked for GPS before release or a scram before release on individuals. Well, a lot of times, some of the individuals do not have the funding for that, so they sit in jail before they get out. So then we have the overcrowding. And so what we need is things like the GPS or the scram to protect the community and the victim. And so with these subsidies, we're not going to get a lot of them, but we have some.
They're going to be coming, if they actually qualify, then they will be able to get their GPS, get out of jail, get their scram, and get out of jail. When Gina was asked about it, we just went online on Monday with it. We just did. So as far as success, I'm hoping that we're going to have a lot of success. And my daughter's pitching coach is calling me, don't know why. But anyway, hopefully she'll be watching this. So I'm really excited for it. And I think there's a lot of individuals and organizations that got involved. I'm hoping it works. I hope it brings down our failures to appear. That's it's starting to be a pretty big problem. And one of the problems is because there's no consequences. You fail to come to court, you lose your driver's license. But so what? People drive around without their driver's license. There's just not a lot of consequences. And so they're not going to jail. They don't care. They don't show up. Maybe if we remind them to come to court and do their cases, maybe things will move a little bit faster. But I'm hopeful that it'll be a good thing. And I can't get this to go. Gotta go like that. There we go. So our upcoming challenges, again, I just talked about failures to appear, applicant shortage. I've heard that 3 different times today. It is very true. I mean, we'll get people that will apply, we'll set them up for an interview, and then they don't show up. So it kind of wastes a lot of time because we have to fit them into when we can interview. The jail overcrowding, huge issue. That is one of my biggest issues. I think prosecutors as well. Not everybody needs to be in jail, but we do need jail space. Certain people need to be in jail. And there are consequences. And if there's no consequences, then we continue this vicious circle. The technology advancement, as we were discussing, Britannia and I, is that there's lots of good technology. It's just when we get it, if we get it, we need training, or we need staff that's here that's trained. When, IT is good, they come up, they help us, but let's say we have a trial going on. And for some reason, the video is just not playing, and the jurors are all sitting here for, 15 minutes waiting for that technology to work. It's frustrating for them. And this doesn't make the court look good either, because it looks like we're ineffective at what we're supposed to be doing. So one of the things we're talking about with technology we would like to do is go from paper to actually electronic. It's really hard for me. I know Britannia always gets on me, but one of my goals is to continue to train myself that I like to write things down. I don't know if a lot of people like, but I like to write things down. I don't mind typing, but things are moving really fast in this court. I don't type as fast as I talk, okay? I just don't. So I need to learn to be able to do that and try to go paperless. And that would save time for my staff, pulling files. Sometimes we have to have hard copy files, but that's one of my goals for myself that I would like to do. So next year when you guys ask, what did I do with my goals? Did I work on that? I'm going to say yes. But it's a tough one for me. Vacancies. So this year, we're coming in at 10% under budget, and that's because of the vacancies that we have. Our personal services has a 10% increase in 2024. Did I not go forward? All right, thanks. So again, with the new staff, new judge, new legal assistant. And I'm gonna go to the next one. So you see that our budget, what it is, total budget. And part of that, 547,000, is again, the budget from grant funded. This is always interesting to me. We've heard some comments about some tickets or hearings or cases going down. They have gone down. Tickets are down 6% from fiscal year '22. And I don't know the answer why that is. I don't know what's going on. Maybe because, again, homicides take up a little bit more time. We've had a lot of that going on, shootings and different things in Billings, Montana. Billings is not the same place that I moved to. It has changed. One really important thing that I see that I'm very excited about is the large reduction in court hearings. And I will attribute that to the prosecution working very well with the current, and it's not the public defenders, it's a contracted public defenders, Fred Snodgrass's firm. And they have been amazing because I think they work well with the prosecutors and they process their cases. They meet with clients. I'm not putting anything down on public defenders. They're very busy. There's not a lot of them, but they contracted for my court, the Snodgrass firm, and it has been wonderful. Things have moved faster. Hearings are down. If you look at this, judge trials, you could see for 2023, we are up. But in a way, the reason why I think that's gone up a little bit is because when a person doesn't come to calendar call, I say you have waived your right to a jury trial, and I can do that on cases, certain cases. And it's not that I don't like jury trials. I think you had the wrong judge. I like jury trials. I think the prosecutors are pretty busy, and I think they manage their cases fairly well. We haven't had a lot of jury trials. We've had only 148 set. And I think to date, we've had 4 jury trials. 4 jury trials, because that's hard work on the prosecutors and the defense. Not a lot of jury trials this year. Warrants, you can see the amounts, bench warrants, and orders of protection. That surprises me. I will say that really surprised me when I saw that number, that is down. Normally those are hotly contested neighbors, spouses, victims of crimes, and that's down. And I said, of course, the hearings held that amount. Citations processed so far is 12,000. So things that are happening. Citations, like I stated, are down. Mental health is up. Court security is a problem. And those are the mental health. We've been working with the mental health center. We've cooperated with them to get evaluations for our mental health for our treatment courts. They move through a little bit faster and we get them sentenced into our treatment court so we can assist individuals in treatment court. Our court security, I currently met, I don't know if it was today or yesterday, with Chief St. John. And we've discussed some courtroom security issues that have come up more so lately. And it's kind of scary. And we've come up with some ideas of some more training things that we're going to do. We might be asking for more funding on some court security, maybe an officer, maybe not, just kind of depends on how things go. We're trying to handle it now before we ask for another officer. And we will have another judge, so another officer will potentially be asked for by the new judge. I can't tell them what to, they may or may not request it, but they can. And like I said, the mental health thing is concerning. And I think I've had this conversation when we were at our retreat. I just see a huge rise in that, and it needs to be addressed. And so here's the treatment court stuff that I'm pretty proud of. Like our co-occurring, again, that's it's one of the hardest treatment courts because it is the mental health. For me, it's very difficult. You get individuals the help they need, get them in compliance, get them on their medications, get them working, and you can have success for many years after, or you can have success for 6 months after graduation. Average is about 2 to 3 years, and then we start it over again, but then they're off working for 2 to 3 years, and that's a benefit. They're not sitting in jail. And that's it.
Very good. Thank you very much. I'll start with a question. Judge, you mentioned that the lack of jail space continues to be a problem and the lack of consequences for low-level offenses continues to be a problem. Can the city help maybe with the new FTEs that you're getting to have some sort of consequence for low-level offenses short of jail? And here I'm thinking simple work release programs where somebody's required to report to the Parks Department or Public Works to pick up garbage. Somebody would have to administer that, of course, but they could then maybe even make some money that could go toward paying off fines and have a double win there. But
Right.
what are the alternatives for non-jail consequences?
So currently, we have the sheriff's labor detail, and we send people to sheriff's labor detail so they don't have to do jail time. They can do that. And that is exactly what you said they do. They go off and they do, it's like a community service in different locations. And that is managed by the jail. They actually do have that. We also have community service that I do when people do graffiti and stuff. I have made them go clean it up. Not necessarily theirs, but others that they have to go clean and scrub. And I think that's been fairly successful if we can get individuals to show up, because they don't like cleaning up somebody else's mess once, like they have created. So we do have some of that in place. When you say low level, I think the big issue, and I think the business people downtown probably are pretty upset about, I would be, is all the open container, because there's no room in the inn, and continually violating and catch and release, catch and release, catch and release. And so business people downtown, I don't believe are probably pretty happy about that. So we do have the MAP program that the city has worked on, and that is a good program as well, because a lot of that is treatment as well. And they get out and they are able to go into that. So I think that's a pretty successful program that's been funded.
Okay, so I'm not hearing any requests to expand what the resources that are available in that category, I guess.
In which category?
Something short of jail.
Probably expand the sheriff's labor detail, which is a county program, or do, when we do community service, we have the organizations that will actually manage that, which are alternatives. I think they do it. Friedel does it, I believe. I'm not sure if Community Solutions does, but we do all sentence people to community service, which isn't just for fines, it's for giving back to the community. And in treatment court, we do it as well. Treatment court, that's part of the program. You have to do, we call it volunteer hours that they have to do.
Okay, so not hearing any budgetary limitations there. Councilmember Ripsis?
Thank you, Mayor. Judge, I want to ask about a goal you had on your FY23 that's not on this year. And it is the juvenile diversion program. You're going to research juvenile diversion court programs to address juvenile misdemeanors. What did you find out and why?
What did I find out? We have a lot of vaping, a lot of marijuana use, which we've got that figured out where they're going back over to district court because they aren't to be, I don't have the jurisdiction to cover those. So those have gone back that direction because I think the city has done some good work on that and determining the jurisdiction stays over in district court, juvenile delinquent area. As far as vaping, I believe that the resource officers have sent quite a few vape, but I don't believe there's been that many, and there's a lot, but they have a Riverstone. They make them go to Riverstone. But as far as juvenile, I don't really, that's what I had. I had misdemeanors, they were misdemeanors, drug charges, and vaping. But most of those now have gone not the vapors, but the marijuana individuals have gone back to juvenile court. So that's what I found out. There's really, at this point, I really don't have the people to do a program. You see what I'm saying?
All right, so you researched programs, you found things that are available, you just don't have the resources for them?
Well, no, it's not the resources. We don't have the jurisdiction anymore, right, Gina? With the marijuana and stuff, we thought we did with the new law and the legalizing marijuana. And so we'd had a lot of juveniles, a lot of kids, high school and whatnot. But those cases, I don't have jurisdiction. They have gone back to, over to district court.
That's correct. Those cases would be considered criminal, well,
they're not criminal when they're in youth court, they would be considered a youth in need of intervention or delinquent youth cases, and those are under the jurisdiction of youth court only, not justice court, not municipal court.
So we just don't have a juvenile misdemeanor program that is in it, or we don't have a juvenile misdemeanor problem that would necessitate any kind of diversion program?
If you want to count traffic and vaping, maybe. But my concern was the medical. or marijuana.
Youth court has their own programs.
Right.
That's just not, it just can't occur within municipal court. It happens over in youth court, which is across the street.
Councilmember Purinton, Councilmember Rowan, Councilmember Joy?
So, Judge, if you could go back, I think it's the last slide. I'm always amazed at these, the drug court, DUI courts. The recidivism rate is 11% in the DUI, 26% in the drug court. And I understand about the co-occurring. To me, that's almost, well, it's not really a different subject, but, so is that recidivism rate, is it based on that 4 years, the 2019 to 2023, or is that per year?
That's basically in total, isn't it? Yeah. Right,
I'm sorry,
total.
it's the total for those 4 years.
To give you a little insight to that as well, that if you didn't do drug court, or say there's different recidivism, but let's say you didn't do a treatment court nationwide, recidivism is 48%. So it's a benefit.
So, and I understand that, because every person you help is a help. But is there a program, is there a way to increase that recidivism rate? Where, decrease it, sorry.
Yeah, we don't
So
want to
that-
increase it.
Well, you wanted, yeah.
If I could give them a beer and send them in a car. maybe.
Thank you. Yeah, there you go. So are there ways to make that better?
Ways to make that better. It's a pretty good percentage, so ways to make that better. Continue on with treatment court. I don't know what the answer to that is, because it just kind of varies. We kind of stay at that, and then when I look at those numbers and look at nationwide, and I look at people within 5 years of being released from prison or 77% recidivism, I kind of like, I think that's, I don't know, I could try.
Well, I mean.
And I'm trying to
but-
think of it. I don't know. I don't have the answer yet.
Okay, so I don't want to say that you're satisfied with that. Yeah, it's good. Can we make it better? And then just piggyback, you made a comment too, that you would like to see more city funding for drug treatment courts, so that you don't have to rely on these grants all the time when they run out.
It would be nice.
So what would that look like, though? What that funding would look like?
That funding would look like, so for co-occurring, how much is that funded per year? $140,000 for that court. In DUI court, what are we looking at? Same? 180. So that's a lot.
It is a lot.
Asking from the city. And I'm thankful for the SAMHSA grants and all the grants that we can apply for, but I know my staff isn't thankful because they have to apply for it. I don't apply for them.
Well, you said drug treatment court, so how much is that one normally?
The drug treatment, probably the same as the DUI. If we can get people, and you can see the recidivism is a lot higher. I will tell you that with the studies, just different individuals, not everybody's the same, not every crime's the same, and so you have different individuals that have come in to the courts. trying to say this politically correct, a lot more criminal thinking and drug charges. And so it's very hard to break that criminal thinking, and that's what we work on.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Owen, Councilmember Troy, Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think I kind of want to pick up on that same thread. I think you're right to flag this issue of treatment court, because as it'll take a few years for the new judge to get up to speed, but eventually we run the risk of both of you wanting treatment courts and competing against each other for grants. And I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So we need to think strategically about how we support these treatment courts. What I want to understand is this issue that sort of some of the city administrator has brought up about uncollected fees, fines, restitution, all of that. I know you're working to be more aggressive. Britannia did a great presentation for the Finance Committee. How, though, from a policy perspective, how do you think and how can we as council think about the line between fines, fees, and restitutions that serve the interest of justice and also happen to fund some court operations versus doing things that are designed to drive the budget and perhaps unduly burdensome? Does that make sense?
Kind of. So what exactly is your question? I mean,
I want
sorry.
to make sure we are as aggressively collecting fines, fees, and restitutions as possible. And it would be great if that also allowed us to support treatment courts better. What I don't want is to have such an incentive to impose fines, fees, and restitution that we then create justice problems.
Right, and that is an absolutely great question, great point. One of my highlights whenever I come to these, and I know that none of you guys have done it, but the court is not revenue generating. It's for punishment and rehabilitation, and I am definitely not, oh, we need to jack the fines to get more money for the general fund. So that is an absolutely great point, that I absolutely support you on that. So as far as collecting, they're already assessed, and they're just ones that people aren't paying. And so I am glad that we went to a different way of collecting. I think we have been more aggressive. And I like it.
So the fees that we have now, fines, fees, and restitution, you think are appropriate?
Yes.
And if the increased collection effort results in increased revenue, then that's an appropriate administration of the court.
That is.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Joy, Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I have a question about one of the goals that are here, quality of life for all people in all places. This is near the bottom. So action is to utilize statutory authority over defendants to ensure accountabilities of all sentencing orders and alternatives. So I won't read it all out because you wrote the goal, you know it, but I wanted to understand it a little better. It seems that that actually is a goal that would go to a core value like equity. And I'm not sure equity is one of our core goals or not, stated or not. But could you explain that just a little bit better so I understand what you're trying to achieve with that goal?
So basically back to what has been assessed, the statutory, what it allows, and sentencing, we have a lot of revocations, accountability for sentencing, jail space. That's basically what I was getting at.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to bring a couple of points that I heard as some of the council members and the mayor talked about, because I think I agree with what I've heard them talk about, maybe helping, but you deal with the individuals more. You understand what needs to be done. And so the mayor brought up about community service. I've always been one to really advocate that we need more of that. And I hear people all the time, constituents talk about, why can't we get these, people who are doing these offense or speeding and getting them out there, picking up the trash on the road, with a lot of trash on the road, let's have them do that. And so I would like to hear, because I would like to see us more, instead of saying, well, it's up to the sheriff. I mean, what can we do as a municipality here to do something like that? So we're not saying to the sheriff, but actually taking care of that and getting more of that community service. So there's some kind of consequences for some of the things they're doing.
So when we talked about the sheriff's labor detail, that's a total different program to keep them the ability, like, let's say you have 10 days jail, you can do 5 days sheriff's labor detail, cut your jail time in half, and then you're not spending as much time in jail. So that's that's one component. The community service that you're talking about, and maybe having people clean up the street and stuff, the organizations, like I stated, that I send people to for supervised misdemeanor, probation, or whatnot, that will be one of their conditions of their sentence. And I can say community service, I should utilize it more. I should. But if we're gonna have somebody cleaning up the street, we always have to remember the liability.
Right.
And so that's the component why I'm a little bit nervous about that. I just don't know how you manage that, how you mitigate that.
I guess my suggestion would maybe talk to some of the departments. I know the Public Works has a lot of trash blowing around at the dump, things like that, and maybe there's other areas within parks and street maintenance that maybe can help with that. So if between the two departments working together, maybe a really robust program can be developed to mitigate that liability as well.
Right, and that is what we could do with you bringing this up. What I could do is talk to alternatives, because what they do is they're the ones that manage it, so they have to pay workers' comp a fee.
Right.
And so I could say, can you add more of these? I have to look at the list. I should add more of these programs like Parks and Rec to that list of places where they can go.
Okay, thank you.
It's a great idea.
I appreciate that. And then, and maybe I'll ask Tom this, but I mean, he talked about youth court. I've always been one as well to really address the problem with youth, to really make sure that we're addressing it, regardless if it's a serious crime, that does go to district, but even the minor crimes, youth need to be aware of, what they've done, and there's some consequences. And so I'm not sure what Tom was getting at when he was asking about some of the youth diversion and stuff, but I do think that that's important. And it seems like it's dropped off your goals that we're just going to address youth as youth. So can you kind of give us an idea, what is it that is really helping to divert some of the youth from when they do make these errors that come before you or these crimes, then how is it really being prevented so they don't come back again?
So, good question. So I do have the MIPs, I do, and I totally forgot about that. But I do get MIPs, and, so what I do is they have them come up, they have to be here with their parents, and sometimes I have them write a paper on what did they learn. I make them sit in the box, I call it the box, and they can sit and watch court and watch everybody come through and say, what have you learned with court? I need you to write a paper. I have them come to treatment court. Sometimes I have individuals come to treatment court because they've been in front of me 2 or 3 times, and there's something going on. And what we learned in our retreat, a lot of it starts family. And I think that was that's something I took from that. It was very good. It's like, so how do we, sometimes individuals don't have, it's not just role model, it's just the trauma. And so how do we deal with that? And so what I learned too from that is when they come up in front of me, I don't want to, scare them straight, whatever. I mean, I kind of used to be a little bit more like that, but it's like I don't know what their background is. I do not want to, cause them more issues, but I do want them to be accountable. So I do have them write papers. Sometimes I make them turn around, which is probably traumatic for some, and read their paper to the whole court, because it's more punishment than a fine, because who likes public speaking? You know what I mean? So there's different things that kind of, when I'm talking to them, I kind of come up with what would be a good resolve with this, just kind of trying to get a, 10-minute read on a kid,
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because I learned a lot at the retreat as well regarding that. And so I hope that as that you think about that, and we all think about that the whole ACES issue with kids, that we find ways to find programs to help and to help it better. And then the last question I had is, because I saw this when I first read the presentation, I didn't send anything in, but since Councilwoman Purin brought it up, the recidivism rates that you have here, it says it's fall from 2019 to 2023, but if we're comparing that to national average, who have recidivism rates, they typically are doing it based upon after 5 years. And so it seems to me like these numbers are not matching. And so I'm wondering if we know what those rates are for those who have graduated after 4 years, and then what's the recidivism rate after 4 years? Because if they just graduated in 23, that doesn't really matter, because we're not measuring it at that point. And so what's the actual rate after the 4-year period?
So I would have to go back and do that. I think we can run those numbers because we keep track of, our graduates, but I think I could do that for you if you need that.
I think that would help because I think then we're going to measure our results, actually what the national, what everyone else measures it after that, a period of time after graduation. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Tidswell?
Judge, earlier you mentioned GPS and scram units. Is there some sort of shortage with them right now? We're not getting them back. We have people sitting, waiting for them. Is that? No. Okay.
Shortage is their money, and people are ordered to do it, but they can't afford it, so then they violate their sentence or their pre-release because they can't afford to get on it. And so they just don't get on it, and then that in turn gives us revocations that we have to see. There's not a shortage of those.
Okay, I didn't, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Chris?
So I don't know what to compare the recidivism rate. My question is there a way to get more graduates? I'm assuming it's by getting more people into the programs, because I'm sure there's a lot more than, and that's not a knock on the numbers, right? That's 11 people's lives, 45, 21. Their lives have changed. Our community is better. But I'm less the recidivism rates look fantastic. How do we grow the programs to get more people into the programs?
Good question. We've been struggling with that, trying to get people to do the program, the incentives to do it. Why do you want to do treatment court? Regular sentence is 1 year. Treatment court's 18 months. People really who do well in it, buy into it, realize I'm going to be here 18 months. We've kind of shortened that a little bit because we're really trying to revamp a few things. But good question, because why do I want to go to treatment court? Why do I need treatment? I don't have a problem. I'm only on my 3rd DUI. I don't have a problem. You know, and that's the kind of stuff that we deal with. So what I do is I take referrals from prosecutors, defense attorneys, the community. If you guys have somebody that has to have a charge, though, you guys can refer people.
So, Judge, just on that, it sounds like the problem is getting them in the pipeline, not that the pipe is too narrow. You've got capacity that's unused. Is that correct?
That is very correct.
Okay.
We're working on that. But like I said, sometimes it's really difficult for people to buy into it because it is a lot of work. It's harder than probation. And I know the community is watching this and I don't want to, turn people off of it, but it is a great program. I would like to bring in a graduate.
And it's voluntary, obviously. You can't force somebody into the treatment court. They
Right,
have
it
to.
has to be voluntary. But like I have graduates that are doing some amazing things. Like one I can think of today that was a felon and still is a felon, but he's doing so amazing and comes to court more than he needs to be and sits here through the whole thing and is he's a great mentor to the other individuals. And he was not in that position when he started. It's impressive.
Good. Okay, very good. Any other questions for the judge? I'm not seeing any. Councilmember Tricky, your hand is not up, so we're assuming you're happy.
All right.
So, Judge, thank you very much. Appreciate your efforts and your staff. Thank you very much.
My
Keep it
staff,
up.
for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Okay, that brings us to the end of our presentations. Do we have public comment on this item? If so, please come forward.
Kevin Nelson, 4235 Bruce Avenue. I would rise and speak about the quality of life in this town. And, through this whole presentation this evening, we spent a lot of time on the criminal. But what about just the ordinary people that just want to have a quality of life? And I think the quality of life issues in these towns are severely looked past. Speaking, and what got me thinking here was Judge Moses's opinion in the Laurel gasification plant. He talked about the constitutional right to a clean and healthful environment, that every state, each person shall maintain and improve that quality of life for future and present generations. But one of the things he said was, to that end, these provisions do not merely prohibit the degree of environmental degradation which can be conclusively linked to ill health and physical endangerment. Rather, they provide environmental protections which are both anticipatory, and preventative. So we put you in place, you pass laws that prevent the degradation of ill health. If you look to USC Code 4913, Quiet Communities, it talks about the physical and the psychological effects of noise on humans. So what did we do? You guys passed laws. One of the things is plainly audible and over 50 feet. You shouldn't have to hear any music, but how many of we get caught in this traffic and these car stereos literally shaking your car? Words and phrases do not be discernible. Bass reverberations are included. We have no enforcement of that. What's that cause? Ill health. Your blood pressure goes up. You grip the steering wheel. Road rage incidents. And we have no enforcement. None. You put in place, or you didn't, but the state put in place noise limits on motorcycles. Mufflers are required. You can go in any town in here and you got motor vehicles running around without exhaust systems constantly. We put signs up saying you need a muffler with an engine brake, but how many of you live in the Heights and have to listen to the noise come off the airport hill? I thought it was interesting what Chief John said. He says, we got the best equipment in town. You know what the problem is? You can't get 8 hours of sleep because you got somebody rattling down the street with their muffler and their car stereo waking you up constantly. So with the best equipment in town, looks like we haven't got anywhere with the quality of life in this town. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I would think that'd be something that the traffic cops are supposed to focus on, so maybe we could get some information on that someday. There's no other public comment here, so Councilor Pierce, you had a question for Chris.
Yeah, so I'm a little confused that the judge is saying we need drug courts, another drug court, at least one, I guess. And I guess it costs $140,000 a year. So out of that, and I know that we always find out, how much these grants come across for these different courts. So what would it be on us if the city were to fully fund their own drug court? Because just like Jennifer was saying, they're going to start competing now for grants. So we're going to be at half the capacity, I suppose, than when we only had one judge. So I'm just confused. How do we look at these grants? And I think she said that they run out of money, so they have to reapply within the year, the fiscal year. So I'm just confused at how do we try to put that together in our budget where we can actually, because you just said it'd be nice if we could get more graduates, but then the judge says, well, we don't have a pipeline problem. So I'm just confused. What do we need? What is the true need there? If she can't get any more people in it, why do we need more drug courts? Why would we need another one, even with another judge, but yet this judge, maybe we will after this second judge comes on. So.
And that's what I was hearing, but that it's not so much now, but in the future that she was concerned about. But Chris, you want to comment further?
I don't know that I have an answer to your question. I think sounds like at the end there, the question was really a question for the judge, not for me. I'm not sure. When it comes to funding, I think the question is, what are we going to rely on ourselves to fund, of which we have total control over, versus what are we going to depend on the state, the federal government, or some outside agency on? And anytime it's the latter, we're both feel good and applauded because we're stretching our dollars, but it means we're using our resources or reliant on that. And organizationally, it's not unique to the court. The organization has its. Wyeth and I had a similar conversation. I think it'll be tomorrow in the budget conversation about affordable housing. If you're going to only have federal dollars, then you got to play by their rules, and you don't get flexibility. So I think part is very broadly, I'm saying, what is it that we say are our priorities, a little bit of last night's discussion on goals, I think that's positive, moving that further up the chain process, and then us truly prioritizing or deciding if this is important enough, we're going to fund it. And or stop doing other things because this is going to have a bigger impact, or the conversations that I think have been really growing this past year, and we spent most of our retreat around, was true prevention. Those are not discussions, my comment is not meant to disparage anything about the past. I think it really is this council, and maybe a little bit prior to this, but I don't get the sense true prevention of crime was a discussion that was going on Monday nights and amongst our staff. It wasn't the conversation we were having. But now we are, for obvious reasons. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that concludes then item number 1. We'll move to item number 2, highlight upcoming agenda items of council interest. Chris, let me guess, budget. And budget and budget.
Yeah, next 2 are budgets, and then I will forewarn you, the May 22nd agenda it's big enough that we needed to split a number of public hearings between the 22nd and the next regular meeting, because land use in a growing town, those issues are yeah. Oh, thank you. Also, the franchise fee lawsuit settlement is on the agenda for the 22nd. So that's probably the single biggest item that's on that agenda as far as community goes.
Okay, thank you very much. If I don't know if that's the point at which our legal counsel was telling us we can actually say something to the public. I think it is, right? So
Yes.
we may want to have our PIO and talking with our city attorney and outside counsel about what that message will be.
Correct, and they've been working directly with one another and staff on the press release, as well as some guidance. And then I realize I covered the next 3 meetings, but we'll go back a week from tonight. We're here again, and a week from last night, both those nights focused on budget.
Okay, very good. Any public comment on that item? No, so we'll close the public comment period. Council discussion. Public comment on non-agenda items. There's no public left here to comment on those non-agenda items. So that means I think we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.